Sort of coming chapter 969. Sorry, the update is late. Snow is like snow in white clothes and the snowman is one thing. Qin Busu always felt that this person was a bit familiar, but she carefully searched through the memories of her heart lake, but no one could match the number. Cui Dongshan and Na Qin Budu squeezed out big and brilliant smiles, then lowered their voices, begging Senior Song to move and follow him to watch the battle a little further, lest the two boundless martial artists can't use their hands and feet on this mountain summit. Then he took Wang Manmeng and the others away from the city gate. Cui Dongshan planned to choose the roof of a high-door mansion as the viewing venue. However, in today's windy and snowy night, the snow and wind were flying around and the sight was blocked. Qian Hao's vision was too high. Lo, it is destined to not be able to see the punches of both sides. In the previous conversation between Mr. and Han Wanzhan, Cui Dongshan moved a little bit, but Wang Manmeng could not hear it clearly. When I know the identity of the two parties tonight, I regret. Die them. Both sides of the question box confronted each other in the street, and they were not in a hurry to make a move. Han Guang, who stood on the spot, just lifted his boots, and when he landed again, the whole street covered with snow was more than a foot thick. Like being washed by hot water, the fog rose and waited until the old Wufu slowed down. Standing still, if a ground dragon is paved, the road is abnormally dry, and the falling snow does not wait for it to fall on the ground and melts on its own. In the end, only the area around Qin Pingan's feet is still left with snow. Song Yushao followed Cui Dongshan out of the street and glanced back at the vision from the corner. The old man smiled. Who said my generation of martial arts is not a fairy? Cui Dongshan knows very well why the husband needs the punch, of course. It has something to do with that Han Wanzhan is not doing things idiomatically, but besides that he has a selfish mind. Want to reassure Senior Song. How to rest assured. It's very simple. The old man only needs to see with his own eyes the current boxing technique of the young man who carried the sword in the past, and he can truly feel relieved. Song Yushao hesitated for a while, gathered the sound and asked with the white-clothed youth next to him, Sect Master Cui, can your husband win? Before eating hot pot, I heard Qin Pingan talk about several student disciples. Cui Dongshan is now the first suzerain of Qinping sword sect. The old man and Qin Pingan were alone, and they had never spoken enough to call him by name, but on Cui Dongshan's side, Song Yushao changed his name. A junior who has achieved academic success can write a few couplets, can say a few sage doctrines or titles, glorious lintels. The elderly will definitely be pleased, but may not be completely relieved. Intrigue. The same reason walking in the arena people are sinister, especially those with strong boxing, have nothing to do with good and evil, and I have to admit that the more young people who abide by the morals of the rivers and lakes, the easier it is to suffer. Song Yushao is not fake but not pedantic and rigid. Therefore, looking at the Jianghu road under Qin Pingan's feet, the old man is even more embarrassed. He hopes that Qin Pingan Avenue will go straight and the climb will go smoothly. He also hopes that this young man who has high hopes will not injured by believing in morality and following the rules. Probably this kind of ambivalence can only be found in the elders of the younger generation. Senior Song can call me Dongshan. Cui Dongshan was so prudent and dared to talk nonsense on Han Wanzhan's side. He didn't poke the disgusting person secretly, but provoke him brightly, but he didn't dare to make a hippie smile on Song Ye's side. Mr. won't lose. Even if I asked Chao Ci for boxing, on the surface he has indeed lost 4 games in a row, but my husband has his own idea. For outsiders, Chao Ci can understand it, and of course Senior Song must know it in his heart. Song Yushao said, I'm worried about this sudden competition. Not only does your husband want to win the boxing grandiosely, but also needs to master the scale and temperament. It's harder and harder and you suffer too much. The layman looks at the excitement and the expert looks at the doorway. Song Yusha's martial arts realm is not high, but in this life he has been accustomed to the world, dealing with the 3 religions and 9 currents, and is familiar with the world. Cui Dongshan lowered his head and rubbed his hands and smiled. It's okay, Senior Song, don't you know that before we banished Xiandu Mountain, the husband used to teach a boxing for Tongyi's Hao Huangyan. It broke the bottleneck of the 10th realm of vitality. It is only because the gentleman made his punches very well. Not only did he not hurt his harmony, but now Pushun Yunkatang is an ally on the mountain who has formally signed an alliance with Qingping Jianzong. Let's have another one. For 100 or 2 years, The two family genealogy children have frequent interactions with each other, probably even if it is the friendship of the world friendship. Back then Song Yu burned the golden basin to wash his hands, and chose to quit the rivers and lakes. The green bamboo sword fairy Su Lang, who became famous in Xianxia country, refused to follow the rules of the country and broke the rules of the rivers and lakes. He insisted on competing with Song Yuxiao and just entered with a golden figure. He eagerly visited Jianshui Villa, intending to step on the shoulders of the sword sage of the country of Susui, and sit on the top spot of the country's swordsmanship in the middle of Aquarius Island. As a result, a genuine young sword fairy forced Su Lang to retreat and beat him back to the town. Later, in order to retrieve the bamboo yellow scabbard, Qin Pingon found Ma Zhou Xian while discussing matters in the Confucian temple. He even fought hard. He didn't hesitate to fight against the female Valkyrie Pei Cup and the Duduan dynasty of China. It's a pity that Qin Pingon is a kid. The old man has never seen it in person after 2 shots. The old man believed that he looked at people in his own eyes. When he first met with the sword-backed boy in his hometown, he had long affirmed that Qin Ping's future road of martial arts would not be slow, let alone bad. But Song Yuxiao didn't expect that this day would come so soon, so early, and so, the first thing to do. On the street, Qin Pingon looked around, an empty city with few visitors. In the old days at the Great Wall of Jianqi, it was still very lively when the second shopkeeper asked people to ask the boxing. Han Guanghu reminded, the old man still means that, don't hide your privates when you do it, otherwise Zhongshirchen will just hit people in face again in this questioning. Qin Pingon smiled and said, after finishing this fight earlier, the younger generation will invite the seniors to drink. Han Guanghu laughed blithely, but the young man would speak kind words. Qin Busu and his party went to the city with the wind, and concisely drew the famous spring from the Daquan dynasty's sword from under the armpit, moved the snow on the side of the city wall, grinned, there is no grievance and no enmity. It's not a narrow encounter, just meet each other, will we start fighting? Could it be that all pure martial arts who have reached the realm are martial idiots who like to meet and fight with each other? Conciseness will inevitably be a little worried. Han Lauer will be fine. People in the world say boxing is afraid of being young, and punching the teacher to death indiscriminately. Moreover, Han Lauer is now in a state of falling and has the root cause of the disease. He coughs every day. The bottle comes from the panacea on the mountain. It always treats the symptoms but not the root cause. If it weren't for Mr. Zeng to remind Jianming not to be willful, Jianming would like to steal a few Yuhua pills from King Jingshan Qinghu Palace. On the other hand, the young hidden official, young and strong, rose extremely fast and has seen a big scene, but now it is at the peak of the scene, the weather, the state, the physique and the aura. Old man Han really picks his opponent how to fight. Song Ji said, don't worry, the two sides are not murderous, they will stop at the end. When they meet, the opportunity is rare. The master of martial arts is no better than the battle of the immortal master. The latter is difficult to find and fill the gap. Wufu asks the box. Hands, not a single mind, rush to life and death. Even if injured in the long run, the benefits are not small. There are only a few masters of the end in the territory of a continent. Like the Aizhou where the martial arts is thin, only Pei Xiang from Leigong Temple is the 10th realm of martial arts. If Pei Xiang wants to learn fist skills, he has to travel across continents. Beiji Luzhou will definitely not go. Wang Fuiying, the old man with a very smelly mouth, was the first martial arts person in Xiaozhou and a woman. In addition, Pei Xiang himself did not travel far and liked quietness, so after reaching the end he made few punches. As a result, Pei Xiang has not been able to make it to the real level. Mr. Zeng smiled and said, this is because neither of them has the intent to kill. As for the murderous intent in them, it is because their fists are too strong. In the eyes of the layman, it becomes killing intent. There is no killing intent. There is no doubt about this. Whether it is Han Wanzhan of Jin Jiazhou or the young hermit of the Summer Palace, broadly speaking, they can be regarded as comrades standing side by side. Maybe the two sides felt a little bit of sympathy deep in their hearts, but Han Lauer was thin-skinned and couldn't say it. After all, if it were not for the army of the Wild Demon clan, the Great Wall of Jianqi had been blocked for many years, especially compared with the earliest expected result. The time that the Wild Demon clan was blocked outside the Great Wall of Jianqi would be at least 2 to 3 years longer. This is equivalent to 2 or 3 years of preparation for the Zhongtu Confucian Temple and Zhenjiazi Mountain to go down the mountain. Otherwise the casualties of Jinjiazhu will only be more severe, and tens of millions of people will be killed at every turn. However, the two stop questioning boxing is not a trifling matter. As long as one side wants to tell a clear victory or defeat, any accident can happen. Besides, the punches of Han Lauer that pressed the bottom of the box with his hands were indeed not lightly weighted. Qin Buyu explained patiently. Concisely, a martial artist is practicing boxing and tempering his physique. The reason why he has to keep asking people about boxing is that his mountain stones can attack jade, his body is small, his muscles and bones are like mountains and dragons, and his blood is like a river. A good questioning fist is like moving mountains and rivers, breaking and then standing, opening up a smooth path which can make a mouthful of pure real air flow faster. In the history of Howren, it is said that there have been several great masters with profound martial arts, except in addition to his own boxing techniques. Teaching people to fist and feed them is even more impressive. Not only can it help the younger generation, but it can even help people heal their injuries. Of course, it is only a rumor. Mr. Zheng said, I'm lucky enough to meet two of you, the so-called expert Qin Daoyu. Concisely asked curiously, which two? Mr. Zheng said slowly, Zhang Tiaoxiao in the Middle Earth. Aquarius Cui Qing. Concisely said, of course I have heard of Zhang Tiaoxiao, the world's first martial artist before Pei Cup, which one does not know, but this Cui Qing is sacred? It is actually a native martial artist in Aquarius, why not well known? Mr. Zheng said, Take Fu Yamashita is not a monk on the mountain. He has a limited lifespan. The dead head is not the wording of a monk who deliberately belittles the man. Therefore, after 100 years, people and deeds are old people who can be called anecdotes. In addition, this person has always regarded himself as a scholar. Later there was a family change and the family ancestral hall was removed from the name. Now you young people in Aquarius have never heard of this name. It's not surprising. Qin Buyu said suddenly, Senior brother Zhang once came across a foreign Confucian scholar who traveled to the divine continent of China. At that time the old man appeared to be desperate. He just called himself Cui and was unwilling to reveal his real name. He was sometimes sober, sometimes crazy, and seemed to be a bit distracted. Signs of enchantment, a peaceful meeting. Because the senior did not want to explore the identity of the other party, but only made a special trip to this person for a long journey. Whenever this person is sober, he talks well and is well learned. In a word, Brother Zhang still remembers him, still fresh. This man once said that a man must be true to his life, his words must be true, he must be honest with others, he must stand upright, his academic studies must be rigorous, and his punching must be reasonable. Mr. Zheng smiled and nodded and said, Cui Cheng's lifelong desire is actually simple to say, but it's a way of doing it. Qin Budu glanced at a man in a blue cotton padded jacket. Could it be that this person's situation is rough, and it is also the work of the person who credits the knife? The 3 lines of washing the victims have different levels of layout in Howren 8 continents. Only in Beipingzu, it seems that the Jianin line of Xishan has hit the wall and suffered a lot, and soon all of them withdrew. Qin undoubtedly, that brother, it is said that the reason why he was able to leave Aquarius Island alive with a few direct disciples was because someone missed the old love and let them go. Mr. Zheng said with a heartfelt smile, No matter how courageous I am, I will not dare to trade with Cui Qing on credit. Otherwise I will be tired and crooked, and I am destined to be unable to leave Aquarius. There were 2 groups of spectators. Qin did not doubt that they were on the side of the city, and Cui Dongshan had chosen a relatively wide-view high-rise roof. When the 2 people on the street were about to punch, Qin Pingon suddenly raised his head, looked towards the city and waved his hand. Han Guanghu went in without knowing it, neither punching nor closing his punches, nor could he turn his head and look stupidly. If Qin Ping took this opportunity to suddenly shoot, wouldn't it be the end of being knocked down by a few punches? Qin Pingan's reputation for questioning is now widely circulated among a handful of martial artists at the top of Howren Mountain, but it is not very good. Cui Dongshan sighed faintly and immediately followed her husband's sight, and saw a tall woman standing on the top of the city, silently appearing, standing alone in the wind and snow, squinting and smiling. As long as she doesn't want people to know, it is Cui Dongshan who thinks he can hit 2 immortals at will with one hand, and she is unaware. She is as good as ever to her husband. But how did she return to the world from the outside world? Song Yushao also saw the figure of the woman and said in doubt, This one is. Cui Dongshan cautiously said, Is it Mr. Sword's servant? Song Yushao smiled and said, as long as it's not that kind of relationship, it's fine. Cui Dongshan seemed to be frozen into a quail, absolutely afraid to talk. Qin Busu subconsciously held down the hilt of the knife, as if approaching an enemy, turned his head and looked at the unexpected guest. He didn't have the appearance of Miyu before the great sword, but it made Qin Busu think that this female cultivator was heaven and earth. Rezin turned around and wanted to move forward, trying to protect everyone, but was shocked to find that he felt as if he was stuck in the mud. It was difficult to lift his feet. Suddenly, this Luoyang Mu guest found that he had condensed Dao heart, his aura was frozen, and pine resin was a complex magical power, just like temporarily returning all of it to a who came to collect debts. Mr. Zheng still maintained the original posture of looking at the street, motionless, not turning or moving, even forcibly making himself unable to read. The white-clothed woman didn't question Qin Budu about them either, but fell from the top of the city on the street, and then passed by Han Guanghu, who was about to punch. It's not to test each other's depth or to follow a female cultivator who doesn't know how serious it is, but the old man has an illusion that there is no reason to say that he can't get the punch, regrets it for a lifetime and wants to be serious again in the future. Going back to the true level is just idiotic dreams. In addition, the elderly Wu Fu still has an inexplicable sense of victory over the Great Road in the dark. The fatal enemy and natural enemy are here, and you should give this fist for the world, Wu Fu. Qin Pingon shook his head slightly, imperceptibly, and then smiled and asked, "Why are you here?" She smiled and said, "It's a bit boring to wait." It seems that when the two sides talked about the past, the entire Blizzard world resumed its normal operation. When she passed by Han Guanghu, she deliberately slowed down and turned to look at the old martial artist who wanted to punch. She didn't speak, but Han Guanghu's heart lake had already stirred up stormy seas, and the old man could clearly hear her cold voice with a slight sarcasm. It's still a bit capable. At a young age, you can understand the broken edict at the apex of the martial arts. Unfortunately, limited by the mediocre aptitude and numerology, you are destined to not reach the top, and the earthly vulgar will not see the true God. You are. Mao Zujin said everything, and I will tell you the answer. Han Guanghu couldn't say one more word unexpectedly. Qin Pingon smiled and introduced Han Guanghu. Master Han, she is the elder in my family. She turned around, walked backwards, stopped by Qin Pingon and stared at the old martial artist. With a gentle smile, she corrected herself. Wrong, this one next to me is my master. She smiled and said, that Luchin, it's a bit hard to kill, but you just need to be cruel, it's not impossible to kill. For thousands of years, there have actually been several unknown watersheds in the vast river of time. To her they were fairy crossings. There are only a handful of Taoists who have the strength to appear at these ancient fairy crossings. Of course, there are only a handful of cultivators who can show up at the fairy crossing. If there are not enough hands, then they can stop the sword light, of course. Only less. Of course, she is not willing to take advantage of this innate advantage and bully the young monks like Lu Qin or Yu Dou. Besides, once she acts like this, she is too involved, and it is easy for the long river of time to appear one or two tributaries out of thin air. The future is unpredictable. It's really unnecessary. Back then, Qi Jingchun went upstream twice during his lifetime. With two-time fairy crossings, once as a bystander, he witnessed the scene of the world's Taoist officials and blue cranes are in groups, and they are cut together. The battle of one continent and land sinks of the outer demon. Once in the present moment of all the people of the world, it was only 200 years ago between him and Dao Zhu, that Qi Jingchun and Dao Zhu had a special question in the Taoist temple of the Little Lotus Cave. Qin Pingon shook his head. She nodded. Indeed, Jiazi time, even 300 to 500 years, is indeed dispensable for her, and safety is negligible. It's boring to stay outside, just wait patiently. As a sword-bearer at the peak of the heavens in the past years, once a sword was slashed for 300 years, causing the entire long river of time to appear a truncated flow, all turned into nothingness. 10,000 years ago, the 5 highest in the ancient heavenly court, with the exception of that one, the other 4 gods went their own way, otherwise there would not be the battle between water and fire. She smiled and said, "Young man, talk to my master in the future, be polite." Han Guanghu was extremely awkward, neither speaking nor nodding. If you can't beat it, you still have to have the strength of character. She stretched her waist, Back, the master remembers to go to the outer sky earlier to practice swords. It should be sooner rather than later, and there should be no delay. Without waiting for what Qin Pingon said, the next moment the city's time flow reversed. Except for the two people on the street who were the mainstays and were not disturbed by the running water. Only the roof Cui Dongshan and Qing Tuzeng were also the exceptions. The rest of the people, it's like never seen the woman in white from beginning to end. She has returned to the outside world, coming and going in a hurry without a trace. Qin Pingon looked embarrassed and said, "Master Han, shall we continue?" Han Guanghu shook his sleeves and said out of anger, "I'm still hitting a fart." The old man was repeatedly claimed by a lady to call a young man, but the key is still not daring to talk back. What kind of a fight with you? Her master, his mother, has never been so embarrassed in this life. After a daze, Qin Pingon saw that Han Guanghu became dull, and then gave himself a thumbs up and said something that made Qin Pingon puzzled. "I misunderstood you. Wait for each of us. Go back to the truth and ask for a good punch. Let's have a drink today and Lord Qinshan has a treat." Cui Dongshan stood up, but it was a pity that he had prepared some golden sentences for Han Wanzhan. What a good one to use his face to receive a punch. He will win if he doesn't punch. It's useless. Song Yushao frowned and asked, "What's the matter?" Cui Dongshan ridiculed a lame reason that he didn't believe it. Han Wanzhan and my husband seemed to be standing still, but in fact there was a literary fight and old Han was willing to go down. Of course Song Yushao didn't believe it, he just laughed it off and didn't break the casserole to ask the end. Cui Dongshan took the lead and came to the house where Wang Manmeng was staying. Then he called Qianhauer, moved 2 tables, prepared drinks, and did not forget to let Qianhauer perform well, and went to the stove to fry some good dishes. Jianming asked in his heart when he came on the road, "Old Han, why didn't you fight?" The old man looked helpless and said, temporarily turned over the almanac, "It is not suitable to ask for boxing today, it is only suitable to drink and eat vegetables." Concisely asked, "What about tomorrow?" The old man stared and said, "Go to the almanac by yourself." Jianming won't keep joking, "Don't fight well, Han Lauer, you have old arms and legs. What kind of prestige fight and fight? If you are in the old world of age, you lose a fight and you may build the reputation that you have accumulated for a lifetime. Go in." Qin Budu was worried about everything and Pine Resin was even more puzzling. Only Mr. Xing smiled as usual. Cui Dongshan clapped his hands and laughed. Outside the house in the heavy snow, all high-profile guests sit on. Good, good, if you don't know each other you will be friends in the future, eating big pieces of meat, big bowls of drinking. Han Guanghu sullen his face as he poured himself a bowl of wine. Qin Pingon held the bowl in both hands and respected everyone. Concisely put down the wine bowl and couldn't help asking, "Qin Pingon, the sword fairy of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, are there really so many rumors from the outside world?" Concise, don't call Qin Shanju by his name. Mr. Xing smiled and reminded his apprentice and then asked Qin Pingon, "Does Mr. Qin now have a character, his own name and his Dao name?" Qin Pingon didn't care, shook his head and smiled, "There are no such things. There are only a few aliases that walk the rivers and lakes. It doesn't matter if you don't mention it, it's okay. Just call them by name. In my hometown when I was young, it seemed that it was not easy to be called a name. After staying in a foreign country for the longest time, it gradually became the Great Wall of Jianqian, half of his hometown. In addition to the Summer Palace, in fact he was often called by his name directly at the wine shop. It has always been the case for general drinkers and the gambling wine holders, either directly calling Qin Pingon, or jokingly with the second shopkeeper. Cui Dongshan said solemnly, "On the Great Wall of Sword Qi, when it comes to the number of sword repairers in the 5 realms, it is actually not as exaggerated as external rumors say, but if according to the rules of Haoran the 2 realms of Jindan and Yuanying are also, it's quite a lot to be considered a sword immortal. However, if the Great Wall of Sword Qi is regarded as a sect of swordsmanship, standing for thousands of years, if every one of the 5 realms of sword repairs can hang statues in the ancestral hall, then the ancestral hall has to be very big, with huge walls and tall houses." Qin Pingon nodded gently. Cui Dongshan's statement is actually not the slightest exaggeration. Concisely said, "Be sure to visit Feixingcheng in Wuxia world in the future." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Practice well if you have a chance." Jianming couldn't help saying, "Qin Pingon, if I remember correctly, we are about the same age. How can you speak like my elders?" Qin Pingon joked, It seems that this habit of being a good teacher is not very good, but it needs to be changed. Concisely grinned. I heard that you have a good relationship with Empress Daquan? Last time I sneaked into the Mirage City, Zheng Yi stole the famous spring. But it was a pity that I couldn't see the emperor who was all over the country. Qin Pingon said helplessly, those gossips that are rumored to be ruined, forget it if you have heard it. Cui Dongshan's little chicken pecked at the rice and said, whoever takes it seriously is a fool. Qin Busu asked bluntly, Mr. Qin, have you ever heard of Xishan Jianyin among the 3 lines of the victims? Qin Pingon smiled and said, ashamed, I just heard the students talk about it, I haven't heard of it before. Looking at this gentleman in a green shirt, Qin Busu couldn't imagine that he was the one before, and he beat Chao Ci out of the Confucian temple with a swollen nose and bruises. Qin Pingon from Beipingzu has always been an unknown official, but the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jianqi is famous for moving the world. It's not that the fragrance is blooming outside the wall, but the fragrance is blooming outside the wall. Therefore, the relationship between Luopishan and Qin Pingon, and the Aquarius dynasty, has been unclear to the interested outsiders over the years, as if looking at flowers in a mist. Qin Busu is still a quick talk without concealing his fine roots and feet and said directly, my brother Lu Taoji is a fairyland sword repairman like me and pine resin, and is also a ghost and fairy. He hopes that Mr. Qin I can serve as the chief guest officer of Xishan Jianyin's line. If Mr. Qin is willing to serve as the chief guest officer of the main hall, of course it is better. I will try my best to facilitate this with Brother Lu. The 3 meridians of the cleansing of grievances are San Xiu military commander and swordsman. The number is not large, they are all over the vast 9 continents and there are dead soldiers in the rest of the world. Mr. Zheng turned his head and glanced at the heavy snow outside the house and said with a soft smile, snow injustice. Cui Dongshan held back for a long time, and when the man on the credit card interjected, he finally had the opportunity to speak, according to the situation. Qin Pingon asked, Senior knows who cut off the head of the emperor of the Yu dynasty? Qin Busu said indifferently, my junior sister did it. Cui Dongshan raised his arm high and was about to slap on the table with a slap. You are endless, Han Wanzhan is here to dig the foot of my sister's wall. Miss Qin, please, dig my husband directly. Cui Dongshan just noticed her husband's sight, and Cui Dongshan acted aggressively. He just wiped the table lightly and said, Master Qin, don't persuade, my husband will not agree. There are so many things. This kind of thing is purely a foreign object. Don't worry about the imaginary title. Qin Bugui smiled and said, Mr. Qin can consider it slowly. Don't worry, Brother Zhang and I will wait for the news slowly. Cui Dongshan started to interrupt again, turning his head to look at the dull-gored man. Taoist Resin, are you familiar with that guy whose real name is Zhangji? Resin shook his head, unfamiliar. Zhangji went down the mountain early. In his early years he had only met face-to-face in the mountains and he did not remember him deeply. How to calculate the ancestral grade in the ancestral hall? He called my uncle. Cui Dongshan nodded and said suddenly, a villager who has a relationship with relatives and the poor have a high level of seniority. Resin nodded and said, it's almost the same reason. Friends Taoist Resin, are you planning to leave the mountain? The pine resin was also refreshed. It actually revealed the plan of Luoyang Euchre's lineage. Before the old master retreats I changed my mind and said that it is not reasonable to always hide in the mountains. Let us go down to find 3 places to stay. Point, except that the location of Zhong to Shenzhou has been determined, the other 2 continents are to be determined and need to be on site. I am responsible for finding suitable sites in Aquarius and Tongya. The city is a good choice. On the Tongyi's house side, the Tawadu outside Daquan Mirage City, the southernmost Kishandu and the Qingjing Mountain to the north are all candidates in my mind. The rest of the 6 continents are abundance. There are also 6 groups of Luoyang Euchres traveling. This is also an internal competition for us. Whoever wins is equivalent to starting the mountain. Cui Dongshan smiled and asked, who persuaded your old patriarch, the traitor Zhangji, that he is so courageous? Is it because of his wealth and wealth? Resin shook his head and said, Zhangji didn't dare to go back to the mountain. It was Mr. Fan's suggestion. Cui Dongshan was not surprised either. This old businessman has a great future. The current monks in the world have not realized one thing. In the previous discussions of the Confucian Temple, according to the instructions of the Saint of Rites, once the ban was opened, the patriarchs of the patriarchs of the patriarchs of the philosophers and the patriarchs had no more worries and taboos. Cui Dongshan asked, Brother Pine Resin, what do you think of us, King Shandu? Resin still said bluntly, not so. I've seen Shindu Mountain a few times before. The site is too small and the foundation is too thin. The main reason is to look at the Qingping sword sect, which is not like a sect who is willing to make the sect noisy and chaotic. Swordsmanship in the world has always been this way. Besides, Xianxia is the head of the 4 most difficult ghosts on the mountain who wants to be close. As long as there is a conflict, it is obvious that you will suffer. When dealing with money, refreshing is the top priority, and you are afraid of encountering unreasonable goods when doing business. Cui Dongshan hurriedly lifted both palms and shook them. Brother Pine Resin, take a long-term view and open your mind. This is the grace to open the door to welcome customers and do business. Songji said straightforwardly, even if you say you are going to break the sky, I will not choose King Shandu. We have rules on the mountain and the other 2 sites are selected. No matter which continent they are on, they are not allowed to be close to the top immortal palaces, especially the swordsman sect. Cui Dongshan tentatively said, in Tongyi's Hao, there is a fairy house on the mountain with a long history, a large number of talents and a simple folk customs. It is called Lingbai Mountain. Yundu, do you think it's a coincidence? Is it a fate? It's a mountain and a wild mountain guest and wild people, and you are not just the staring at the mung bean and you will catch each other's eyes at once? Resin frowned and said, Lingbai Mountain and Yundu? Where is it? Without waiting for Cui Dongshan to continue to swindle and abduct, Qin Pingon has already spoken. Don't choose this place for Taoist Pine Resin. The limitations are too big. Even if you are willing to spend money to expand the ferry, it will be very difficult to dock a transcontinental ferry. Resin nodded, lifted the wine bowl and drank it all in one fell swoop. The site must be able to dock at least 3 intercontinental ferries at the same time. Cui Dongshan said, what about the Rin River? Pine Resin thought for a while. It's barely possible on the Xinghe River. The boundaries on both sides of the river are vast, but it's still not as good as the Tayedu of the Daquan dynasty and the Kishandu of the south. Cui Dongshan said with a smile, then don't worry, just wait and see. Qin Pingon picked up the wine bowl, shook it gently and was stunned. He said in his heart, I know. The next moment, Qin Pingon sat on the railing of a long golden bridge, still holding the bowl of wine in his hand. The woman in white smiled and said, is it boring? Qin Pingon looked around, isn't it true? She shook her head and said, the situation tens of thousands of years ago is just what I think in my heart. It's probably just like what the world books of later generations say, the wind and snow are old and familiar, and the bright moon is always reunited, so it is difficult for people to meet again. By the way, don't want to see Jing Dafeng and Fan Junmeo's predecessors? It's okay to have a few words with them. It's hard to tell whether it's true or false. Qin Pingon shook his head, thought for a while and asked curiously, are the 2 flying platforms far from here? She smiled and said, the term distance is given by later generations. The direction of the heart is the direction of the sword. Qin Pingon finished drinking, lifted the white bowl in his hand, leaned forward and asked, if I drop the wine bowl, if there is no obstacle in the way when the white bowl touches the ground, it will be a few years later? She smiled and said, then try it. Qin Pingon gently threw the wine bowl out of the bridge in his hand and smiled and said, the broken pieces will be safe for 10,000 years and the 10,000 years will be safe. She stretched out her hand and rubbed Qin Pingon's head. I hope the master will always be young. Withdrawing her hand, she supported the railing with both hands. It is different after all. Qin Pingon hugged the back of his head with both hands, gently shook his legs outside the bridge rail and laughed softly. It's not easy. After a moment of silence, Qin Pingon asked the biggest question in his heart. Why did the world's magic spells fall like rain in the first place? If it were not for this heavy rain of swordsmanship and supernatural powers, and it fell on the earth and earth, there might not have been the rise of later human races. She looked into the distance and there used to be one who looked after the eternal stars alone. Year after year she blinked with Qin Pingon next to her and said, question and answer by yourself. Sort of coming chapter 970. They are sitting on the railing of the arch bridge just as they did in the past. Qin Pingon suddenly said, I once heard an incredible conjecture that the world we live in has actually cycled countless times, and it is a repetition without any changes. All living beings and dead things are in one calamity. The heaven and the earth are born, the heaven and the earth are destroyed, and then they start again. The cycle repeats. It is not bad at all. It is just that there are different opinions about the number of years of this calamity, and some say it is 10,000 years. There are also 100,000 years or even longer. Therefore later generations will have the saying that there is no escape. The sages have already said that it is impossible to break. Is that really the case? She listened quietly to Qin Pingan's words, and when the latter asked, she smiled and said, the idea is good, new and interesting, but it's far off the topic and it's ridiculously wrong. Qin Pingan breathed a sigh of relief and said softly, it's not that good. Otherwise, a person's words and deeds, the number of paths in the whole life, as large as the vast expanse of stars outside the sky, as small as the grass and trees on the earth, and even the path of each snowflake falling to the ground, are definite numbers. Then the so-called present life counts what happened. She smiled and asked, is it because of the speculation derived from the saying that God is infallible and life is in heaven? Qin Pingan stood up, walked on the railings, slowly fisted and smiled, I don't know whether it is good or bad. After stopping, Qin Pingan exhausted his eyes, but could not see any stars outside the sky. Only the golden long bridge at the foot is in the middle of the sea of clouds. She seemed to see the regret in Qin Pingan's heart. She waved her snow-white sleeves. In an instant, in Qin Pingan's vision, bright stars were arranged like chess pieces, and the scenery was magnificent. Many densely clustered stars, the rays of light converge into a gorgeous river, dragging like sword light. There are also many stars gathering, such as magnificent palaces. Qin Pingan was startled for a moment and curiously asked, the world martial arts are circulating. It seems that the three religions don't care about it. It's because it's not easy to manage and it's just a thankless or uncontrollable thing. Has reached a certain agreement, just let it go and watch the changes? She asked back. The master has been to some weird mountain, right? Qin Pingan understood instantly and wondered, is this mountain not on the ground? It's outside the sky? There are countless suns and moons outside the sky, and everyone has a share of the blessings of the sky, but certain stars with special meanings are all isolated cases. Some of the hanging mansions of the godlike spirits, but some have been preserved, because at the time Dao Zhu and Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, who created the talisman together, had a meticulous deduction. What needs to be left is a bit particular. Between the words, she smiled and stretched out a finger, pointing to a place in the emptiness. Following her guidance, Qin Pingan seemed to be temporarily granted some kind of Tianyan Tong similar to the inexhaustible Buddhism, so that he saw a star that was actually no stranger at first glance. In the human field of vision, it is the Venus among the 5 elements. At dawn, only this star is unique, as if one star retreats from the stars, so it is also known as Changgang or Qiming. According to the Book of Heaven, the ancient star Changgang, once the trajectory deviates, it will change the sky, which means that the world will be armed. The Qintian supervisors of the secular dynasties will arrange special, celestial masters, who are proficient in celestial phenomena, who are responsible for staring at the position and castration of this ancient star in different solar terms and time. The first ancestor of this poor military strategist, to a large extent, he also blazed a path to the heavens for the world of martial arts. But he was only halfway there and failed to truly attract the heavens and the earth. If he succeeds, his existence itself is quite it's on the third soaring platform. This merit is recognized in the world, and there is the 10,000-year covenant between the patriarch of the 3 teachings and him, but it is secret and no record. Now the 10,000-year time limit is approaching and the world is big and small. The Qintian supervisor is already busy. She spoke a little jokingly, patted the railing with both hands and slowly said, so going back to the source, in a strict sense the difference between martial arts and magic is not clear, but the same source in different streams, which seems to be a well. Water does not offend the relationship between rivers and waters. In the final analysis, it is still a source of origin. This is why the master was a pure martial artist, but was able to practice talisman. It is because Ko Ming saw this and then passed by the head of Bai Yujing. Improvement, suitable for martial arts practice, is like taking a trick to walk into a big house from the side door. That's why a mountain like Tongya's Hupashan, a pure martial arts, can also practice the magic of the immortal family. The reason why it cannot be promoted is because the threshold is a bit higher, and the requirements for qualifications are higher. The so-called great monks are often obsessed with proving the path for immortality and must have no distractions. The higher the position, the more foreign objects need to be cut off. Naturally, there is no need to practice martial arts. Chicken ribs. But in fact, the road of martial arts at the feet of a pure wufu is the road that has the most hope of becoming it in the flesh and immortality of the true spirit. It is a little harder to walk. It needs to be among the 11th realms within 200 to 300 years. For people nowadays, they have a little aptitude for cultivation. Since they can take shortcuts and go smoothly, why bother to take risks and take a dead-end path? Lu Qin can count on the one who can see through this. So if I'm not wrong, I guessed it. If this is the case, this Master Lu, in addition to the real white bone, also hides a clone, and is always secretly practicing martial arts. He went to Runyue Peak to see the hard work. In fact, it is not as simple as the surface. Maybe Bai Yujing is inside the 12th floor of the 5th city. Jiang Zhaomo's martial arts attainments in Ziki Tower are not as good as Lu Qin, far inferior. Qin Pingon squinted and said with a smile, "So Lu Qin also learns martial arts?" "That's right." On the wine table in the lobby of the city, Qin Pingon seemed to have just wandered out of the sky, which did not hinder the normal conversation between him and Qin Bugui and his party. Qin Pingon seemed to ask casually, "Senior Qin is in the same vein as his senior brother Xianxia. Do you know a lot about me?" Qin Bugui shook his head and said, "Not much and not too much." For example, during his trip to Luzhou in the north, Lord Qin once encountered a team of horsemen and pawns from the North Yen Kingdom, and there were also several assassins from the Lushan Mountain who met on a narrow road. The brave wins. Qin Pingon nodded and did not deny the incident. That was Qin Pingan's first real mass murder. Even if it was the first shot when he was a teenager, it was fighting side by side with Song Yushao, facing an elite cavalry of the combing water country. When Qin Pingon shot on the battlefield, he would deliberately avoid the ordinary cavalry. Mr. Zheng smiled and said, "A leaf falls and you know autumn." Cui Dongshan grinned and said, "No need, can't it? The small area of Aquarius Island has small benefits. A little bit of trouble will not hide the traces of dragons and snakes." Qin Busu nodded and said, "What sect Master Cui said is the truth. Senior brother Lu Taozi's abbot Shishan Jianian's lineage really wanted to take root in Aquarius in the early years, but later it didn't conform to Zayaha's concept of governing the country, and the group was sent out by gift, saying that it was a gift, but it was actually expelled from the country. It's just that Cui Yang still saved the face for senior brother Lu. He neither publicized the matter nor used the monks of the Dali court. From beginning to end he never hurt anyone." Cui Dongshan gave a thumbs up and said in admiration, "Sister Qin is quick to talk, you friend Dongshan is settled." Qin Bugui smiled and asked, "Why is Qin Shanju not willing to serve as the national teacher of Dali?" As soon as the words came out, even Concise pricked up his ears, waiting for the answer from Qin Pingan. Not only to give charcoal in the snow to the Dai dynasty, but also to icing on the cake for yourself in Luopashan, why not do it? Whether it is from his teacher, deeds, fame, strength, mountain incense. In all aspects, Qin Pingan is the most suitable candidate and there is no one. Qin Pingan took a sip of wine, smiled and said nothing. Could it be that Lu Taoji Shishan Jianin and the 3 veins of the scourge are going down the mountain like the Luoyang Myuk, intending to surface? Could it be that he had a secret agreement with some patriarchs of the 100 schools and planned to participate in the grand event together, trying to walk out of the house in the next Sanjiao Patriarch's walk, carrying a bucket to catch water to the sky? Qin Pingon didn't say a word, and the lobby fell into a slightly embarrassing atmosphere of silence. Cui Dongshan broke the silence. "If I don't speak, I won't be cold for half an hour?" Seeing that Qin Pingon was reluctant to say more about this matter, Qin didn't think he had asked. Song Ji asked, "Sect Master Cui seems to be proficient in all kinds of secret history? His own line of Luoyang Myuk is an incompetent savage who has no roots outside the mountain, but this young-looking young lord, even the real name of Pao Zhai's ancestor, can be explained in one word. And looking at the posture, no matter what they are talking about, this person can speak. There are so many strange people and strangers in Jiuzhou, Countless stories about the mountains and the deeds of the immortal family, especially some secrets that have never been recorded. It can only be spread word of mouth on a small scale. Outsiders wanting to learn the inside story is like finding a needle in a haystack, but this person seems to be proficient in heist gossip and can always do it easily. Everyone, if you want to do this, you must have age, realm, and connections. Cui Dongshan put his palms against the wine bowl, gently rotated it and said with a smile, "Pick up wheat ears in the field and select bean sprouts in the ditch of the pit. It is not worthy of a job." Cui Dongshan tentatively said, "Brother Songji, since you have reached the boundary of Xindu Mountain, there is no reason to pass the door. After drinking tonight you can go to Xindu Mountain to rest for a while and I will take it personally. Let you take a trip to the Rinhe River to see if there is a suitable site, and you can open up a Xianxia ferry with the largest scale in Tonghishao. I will put the cruel words here in front of my husband today, as long as Brother Songji has a good eye, even if I give up my face and save my life, I will also seek a great cause for the future for Brother Songji." The dull man said in a dull voice, "Sect Master Cui, just call my name Pang Chao. The face is huge, the transcendence is super." It was indeed the other party taking a bite of a pine resin brother shouting that Pang Chao got goosebumps all over his body. Cui Dongshan said solemnly, "That can't work. It's too unfamiliar to call each other fellow Taoists. If Brother Pang doesn't call me Brother Dongshan, he just looks down on me and Brother Pang looks down on me. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I made up my mind to climb up Brother Pang." He and Pang Chao were brothers and worshipped a hand, then Zhangji would have to call Uncle Cui when he saw him later. That's a who is unprofitable and can't afford to pull the hair early, and now has this level of relatives, uncles and nephews. Meet Zhangji. Are you embarrassed to be in business? Pang Chao was not good at words, and when he encountered Cui Dongshan's oil, he didn't know how to deal with it. He had to drink silently without talking. Of course, he felt that he had declined the other party, but the other party had taken it as Pang Chao acquiesced. On a windy and snowy night, we met by chance. The wine had been drunk and the matter was over. Mr. Zing wants to travel north alone, lonely and wild, and he is used to being home from all corners of the world. As for the concise magic knife, Mingquan stolen from Yao Ling's hand, it will be handed over by Han Guanghu for the Emperor Yao of Daquan. As to how to deal with this magical soldier that Daquan used to suppress the national destiny, it is the matter of the female Emperor Yao Jinji. Han Guanghu returned to Mirage City with Jian Ming. He was just at the wine table. The old man had already made a decision. He promised Mr. Zeng through secret words that he would go to the temple of the Daquan dynasty to find a position and help Yao Jinji. At least 30 years. As a result, the lack of a Daquan dynasty with the strength of a mountain in these years is tantamount to an additional martial artist out of thin air. What's more, Han Guanghu is not at the peak of martial arts, but the shadow of the famous Tree of Man. A martial artist who used to punch Jinjiao for 100 years is a huge deterrent to Tonghishao today, and it is a veritable New Year's luck for Daquan Yao family. Without Cui Dongshan's help to lead the way, Qin Buyu and Pang Chao set off for Yufeng to go to Mishue Peak, and then stayed in Qingping Jianzong for a while, and then followed Cui Dongshan on the Rhone River in the middle of Tonghishao. Song Yushao went south with Han Guanghu, who had met and fell in love. He planned to see the prestigious Mirage City, and then waited for the Fengyuan ferry at Taiedu, and then followed the transcontinental ferry first south to drive the mountain crossing to Tonghishao, and then all the way north across the sea to Aquarius Island. The old man will disembark in the old Dragon City, walk through the semi-continental land and slowly return to the water country. Qin Pingon wanted to send Song Yushao to the gate of the city. The old man waved his hand to indicate that he would not use it, so Qin Pingon just sent it to the street in front of the house. Han Guanghu stopped and said, "Next time Grandmaster Qin comes to Mirage City, he will make up for the discussion that he owes today." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Jiangjun Wenquan Juniors are good at it." Han Guanghu choked for a while and the young people just didn't listen to them. It is still the conciseness of holding a knife under the arm, winking and joking. "Qin Pingan, this time I will go to Daquan with Han Lauer and I will definitely see someone. Do you have anything to ask me to help?" Qin Pingon raised his face sternly and put on the elder's shelf. "Your boy's wine tastes a little bit, so remember to drink more and talk less on the wine table in the future." Concise and deflated. Mr. Zeng smiled and reminded the apprentice, "You are too late to speak, remember. Song Yushao and his party walked away slowly on the snow-filled road. Jian Ming suddenly turned around, walked backwards, looked at Mr. Zheng who was wearing a blue cotton robe and shouted, "Master, take care." Mr. Zheng smiled and nodded, "Each cherish each other." Cui Dongshan squatted on the steps and pinched a snowball. Mr. Zheng and Qin Pingon stood side by side and said, "Mr. Qin, we met for the first time in the past. It was so offending. I hope the adults will not remember the villain." The woman in white appeared before the city and called Qin Pingon as her master. She then turned around the time at will. Afterwards, even the two ghosts Qin Buyu and Pang Chao were unaware of the incident. Mr. Zheng traveled the world for thousands of years. I have seen a lot of big winds and waves, but this is the first time Mr. Zheng has encountered it. It is an eye-opener. As for people under the eaves, saying a few words with their heads down is not wrong. Qin Pingon clasped his hands and clasped his fists. Mr. Zheng replied he never complained when he met Ping Shui, and he can drink at the same table when the rivers and lakes meet again, and he can talk and laugh at the same table, which is a good destiny. Besides, he is concise and has a good temperament. Mr. Zheng smiled knowingly, holding a fist in return. Qin Pingon said, "Mr. Zheng, I will not be far away. I will go to Luopishan as a guest when I have time. I will stay more in my hometown in the future. Qingping Jianzong is taken care of by Cui Dongshan, so I can rest assured. Besides, he is the sect master and I am not considered as the treasurer." Mr. Zheng smiled and said, "There is no need to send it off. You will parade alone on a windy and snowy road. It has no charm." Cui Dongshan held the snowball in both hands, his eyes murmured and said, "Why do you have to sprinkle another heavy snow on the heart of the students and chill the hearts of the soldiers?" Mr. Zheng smiled and said, "The articles on the road are full of articles. Naturally, it is not easy to do. But as long as a person is famous all over the world, he will often discredit his peers. There are very few exceptions." Qin Pingon said, "All good people do not ask for knowledge. Don't do evil, don't be afraid of people, no." Mr. Zheng nodded and said, "Mr. Qin is already on the road to practice." Qin Pingon turned his head, clasped his fists and smiled. "That junior will encourage with Mr. Zheng." Mr. Zheng's palm was against the hilt of the scabbard. As a result of his identity, he had to hide and tuck, which made Mr. Qin laugh. Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "There are not only swordsmen in the arena, but the swordsmen must be from the rivers and lakes." Mr. Zheng smiled and said, "This is the #1 toast." After parting from the Mo family who used to be a wood mover, Qin Pingon was taken by Cui Dongshan to a room in the house. He said that this money monkey is a bit interesting and he must meet him. There was a small brazier in the house. The thin man was rubbing his hands to keep warm. He was yawning and a little sleepy. Qian Hoer heard a loud knock on the door and quickly got up and ran to open the door, and found that besides the funny-spoken Master Zhou Xian, there was also the green-shirt guest who almost had a fight with others at the door. While Qian Hoer was working on the wording, the other party smiled sincerely, and he took the initiative to say, "Excuse me." Qian Hoer was a little bit stunned to hear, and he didn't look like Master Zhou Xian. Cui Dongshan coughed. Qian Hoer recovered and hurriedly gave way, bowed his head and said, please come in, don't disturb." "How can you disturb? The house is not big, but there are a lot of chairs. They are all collected by money monkeys who like to make wood. Old objects and excellent carpentry." Cui Dongshan carried a chair in one hand and hooked one with his feet. The three of them sat around the brazier. "Sir, although Qian Hoer has never read a book, he is very easy to learn. He is a typical self-taught talent. He can still tell me the truth. This is not because he was in this room not long ago and he told me that one day if you don't read, Pepsi will be wasteful." Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, "Very insightful." Qian Hoer was stunned and said timidly, "I don't seem to have said it." Cui Dongshan categorically said, "You seem to have said it." Qian Hoer glanced at Cui Dongshan with a serious face and said with a stern expression, "Mr. Cui said that I said it, then I said it. Qin Pingon can't help but is quite suitable to go to Xindu Mountain, and he cooks good dishes." Without seeing Qian Hoer, Cui Dongshan waved his hand and grabbed the charcoal drawing booklet on the table and handed it to her husband. Qin Pingon smiled and looked at Qian Hoer, and the man hurriedly said, "Just look and see, things with ghosts and symbols will laugh and be generous, for fear that it will stain the eyes of the immortal master." Cui Dongshan glared. If you haven't studied before, just talk less literally. This is not to show off your feet and show off your knowledge. This is called Taishao generous. It is Taishao generous. Qian Hou'er was skeptical. He had seen this idiom in the book, and he had even made a special trip with Xiaofeng girl for advice. Qin Pingan took the booklet and said, "Brother Qian, don't listen to Dongshan's nonsense." After chatting, Qin Pingan learned that Qian Hou'er's real name is Qian Jun, and there is also a kiln in his hometown. He is half of his colleague, so there will be some chatting. Qin Pingan knew Cui Dongshan's intentions, so he pushed the boat along the river and invited Qian Jun to see Xindu Mountain. If he felt the smell of the mountain was similar, he would simply settle down and find a mountain identity on Xindu Mountain. If I want to move my nest in the future, I have a foundation, so I don't have to worry about finding the temple even if I carry the pig's head. After all, the hero can only hear half of the words. Qian Hou'er still declined the other party's kindness. It is inevitable that this three-level martial arts master Cui, who behaves strangely and whispered in his heart, coupled with the kind words and deeds of Mr. Chen, their hills are so lacking in people. Hungry and not choosing what to eat, even this kind of stuff like myself is eye-catching. Seeing that the man in the green shirt was rejected without getting angry, Qian Hou'er heaved a sigh of relief. He has been wandering around for so many years and his skill in martial arts and boxing is sloppy, but he thinks he has some skill in his face. The reason why he doesn't know how to promote is not that Qian Hou doesn't want to be rich, but that he has a long memory and knows the truth of the depths of the rivers and lakes. Only a small broken bowl. In the final analysis, Qian Jun has become accustomed to life and he doesn't believe his life is good anymore. Ask him Qian Jun to be Wang Manmeng of the gods on the mountain, or Hong Chou, a grand master who is treated with courtesy everywhere. I guess he has just started bargaining with each other a long time ago. Give him a few offerings every year. There are some in the mountains. Unprepared private home? Qin Pingan left the house with Cui Dongshan. After crossing the threshold, Cui Dongshan turned his head and gave a thumbs up to the thin man beside him. Qian Hou'er, let my husband invite the heroes who went up the mountain on their own initiative. Count, you can still refuse if you are invited, and it is even rarer. It's amazing. After leaving the house, Qin Pingan walked on the street. The wind and snow filled the streets and the night was heavy, but there was no reason to think of a sentence that was exactly the opposite of the scene at this time. In the big kiln of heaven and earth, yang charcoal is used for cooking and all things are melted, which is inevitable. The earliest words were heard by Lu Xianyang from the old man Yao, the master at the mouth of the kiln. Qin Pingan was swinging out on Qin Pingan's side. Qin Pingan followed the old man Yao to search for porcelain clay, going back and forth in the mountains and out of the mountains. Maybe they couldn't say three things. Then Qin Pingan was on the way to Luzhou in Beiju, and Sui Jingqing, who had been with an oil bottle next to him, had also felt this. Qin Pingan was walking slowly in the snow tonight, turning his head and looking. Cui Dongshan turned his head and asked in doubt, "Sir, is there something weird?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It's nothing." With a trembling wrist, Qin Pingan slipped a Chaozi dagger from his sleeve, and the short knife, Wuxia, that has not yet figured out the roots of the knife. They were all trophies that Sui Jingqing helped to find in the past. Even Lu Jinglong saw two handles. Dagger can't help feeling that it's so lucky. Lu Jinglong recognized this Chaozi dagger, which was recorded in official history, and the other one was named Cut Deer by Qin Pingan. He always felt that it was better than the old name Wuxia engraved on the blade. I have to admit that naming depends on talent. Qin Pingan twisted his wrist and played a series of sharp knives, all around the snowflakes. Cui Dongshan couldn't bear to break Mr. S' peaceful state of mind, but he couldn't hold it back anymore, so he had to carefully ask, "Since the big fish has bitten the bait, when will Mr. pick up the rod?" Qin Pingan stopped the dagger and put it back in his sleeve. He said in a huff, "If you know what you ask, pretend to be stupid." Whoever listened to the root of the wall before is the same virtue as Lu Xianyang. No wonder he is commensurate with brothers, and he is very enthusiastic. Cui Dongshan aggrieved. Mr. S' mind is like a sea and the water is deep and silent. He used to be a dumb riddle with senior song. Without hearing Mr. S' exact answer in person, the students dare not rest assured. Qin Pingan said, "This plan was not discussed with you in advance. I need to apologize to you and promise not to be an example." Cui Dongshan became more aggrieved. Students are not guests. If you say these kind words again, the students will really feel sad. Stale Ping He smiled. Cui Dongshan immediately straightened his waist and said loudly, "Students are not wronged." Qin Pingon lowered his head and rubbed his hands and gently exhaled a breath of mist. Xianxia, a throne demon of course, can be regarded as a big fish who has cast its own net. If it weren't for Senior Song's remarks, as long as Xianxia dare to come to Tongyi's Hao, then don't leave. I plus Xiao Mo Cui Dongshan and me you are enough. Outside the battlefield to lure them into profit, invite the king to enter the urn, and then set up a net to besiege. Of course, this is against the morals of the world, so Qin Pingon would have the conversation with the Song elders. Speaking of realm status, the Confucian temple is forbidden by the volcanoes of Lao Junlu, and Lu Cha, who is imprisoned in a mysterious landscape in Gongdalan, is roughly the same. Both are one of the 14 old throne big monsters, but Lu Cha the seat is higher. Of course, if Lu Cha hadn't been blocked by Qin Chunan and returned to his hometown as a swordsman in the 14th realm, Lu Cha would now be the head of Kendo in the wild. And the reason why Xianxia was so missed by Qin Pingon was not only because of the opponent's heavy-handed killings on the battlefield. The method was fierce. After crossing the Great Wall of Sword Qi and reaching the Hauran world, Xianxia also contributed a lot, which can really make Qin the one who started the killing in peace. Or Xianxia once smashed and killed a sword fairy on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi in full view. Cui Dongshan was a little bit shattered. It seemed that he had made up his mind. He had to ask why he had to. He said, "Temporarily stop and change your mind. Isn't it a waste of all previous efforts? In my heart will it be unhappy for a long time?" Qin Pingon was silent. The prisoners of Lu Cha and Xianxia did not kill, both of which were Middle-earth Confucian temples, which to be precise meant ritual saints. Earlier in the Confucian temple there was no objection, but the saints of rituals were so decided, and they stopped arguing about this matter. Cui Dongshan sighed softly and kept using his toes to provoke snow on the road. After the husband returned to his hometown, Luopa Mountain established the sect. In addition to watching Xingyang Mountain there was a lot of noise. After that he quickly chose a state similar to the closure of the mountain for Luopa Mountain, and then the husband hurriedly chose the site of Tongtong. Yizhou quickly established the next clan. The former is fair and reasonable. To say the latter, if you want to fill a continent's land shortage, you must own a piece of land, public and private, and of course it's fair enough. But Cui Dongshan had already sensed something wrong. Maybe Zhou Lian on the side of Luopishan had also noticed it, but the old cook was a good person and deliberately pretended to be stupid. At that time Xianxia had no way to dispatch and the command was ineffective. After eating and hanging on the Jiazi account he needed to make up for the work. He left the battlefield temporarily like Huang Wan and returned to the wild hinterland. He was responsible for hunting, intercepting and killing those hiding in the wild. Jianqi Great Wall Sword Repair. Qin Pingon ordered on the spot that Jianxiu was not allowed to rescue, but a group of Jianxiu still left the city. And this incident is also the most criticized young hidden official who sits in the Summer Palace. There are still many sword repairs in the colorful world of Feixingcheng. He feels that Qin Pingon is too cold-blooded and utilitarian, even if he deserves it. The last hermit of the Great Sword Qi Great Wall is still not a pure Sword Qi Great Wall sword repair. Of course, it was not because of this kind of criticism that Qin Pingon had a particularly murderous intent on Xianxia, so he deliberately took the Qingtong to meet Xianxia, using the guise of business talks to induce her to take the initiative to leave the forbidden area. It's just like the writer's actions of Beiyan country that I encountered on the way to Luzhou and Beiju. Life is always so complicated. Cui Dongshan asked tentatively. The reason why he Xiangting and Yu Qingzhang left Luopishan is actually because the husband secretly instructed Yu to accept disciples? Qin Pingon shook his head and finally spoke. At that time, it was just a coincidence that no one could think of such a far away. It was also a coincidence that they followed Yu and didn't have to meet Xianxia. Otherwise, I don't know how to clean up this mess. Children are children, so there are certain things that adults cannot expect children to understand. There are some truths that can only be realized by children slowly as they grow up. If the dream is to make a snowman, growing up is like eating a cold meal. Once Xianxia appeared in Tongyi's Hao and participated in the excavation of the central part, even if Xianxia used a blinding technique, it would be impossible for the paper to contain the fire for a long time. Sooner or later, the sword fairy Fizi from the Great Wall of Sword Qi will know the inside story. The same as the roots of the wild great demon Xiaomo is different. Sleeping for thousands of years in the bright moon and bright color has nothing to do with the Great Wall of Jianqi. In addition, there was an old deaf child in the top 10 swords immortals in the past years, so the local sword repairman of the Great Wall of Sword Qi was relatively open-minded in dealing with this matter. There is also the Wild Tao Pavilion next to Li Huai, who has lived in 100,000 mountains for a long time, and coupled with the relationship between the old sword fairy and the old blind man, Tao Ting has no guts to grudge against the Great Wall of Jianqi and has no guts. But Xianxia is different. Being detained is one thing. The two sides don't meet each other and they don't communicate with each other. Once they come to Tongyi's Hao without killing them, it's another thing. The Confucian temple has its own considerations. With Lu Cha and Yang Ji in the past few years, there have been remnants of the demon clan who have not been able to leave the vast world. Seeing that the search for mountains on all continents is getting more and more powerful, they have taken the initiative to show their identities with the colleges of all continents. For example, last time Chen Pingon was in Gongdalin, he had specifically consulted Jing Shengsiping on this matter. He was a side attack asking those monster monks who were desperate and unwilling to jump over the wall in a hurry, about how many of them were in the middle 5th and upper 5th levels. Chen Pingon was surprised by the number of answers. Of course, Beiju Luzhou is an exception. Many monster monks who dared not show up in Aquarius Island crossed the sea to secretly cross the sea and landed on Beiju Luzhou, wanting to go to the academy to find an amulet, regardless of what happened afterwards. If you lose your mind, save your life first. After all, as long as the monks from all continents search for the mountains, you will really kill the red eye. As a result, there were still many monster monks who did not wait for them to see the academy and were intercepted halfway down the road. In Fuyao and Jinjiazu, this kind of thing also happened from time to time. The Confucian temple and the academies of various continents were also checked, but any clues found, especially whether the academies were really attentive, all have to be questioned. As for Yufu Academy, there is no need to put a question mark. Qin Pingon asked, if it was Brother Cui, what would he do? Senior Brother Cui Yang's knowledge of work has its own cool style. Cui Dongshan said, it's hard to say. That old who does things and leaves no way for others to retreat may be to make the best use of everything. For example, let Yang Ji come to Tongyi's Hao to dig a new big blasphemy, or will Yang stop? Putting it directly on Ao Pingzhou as the great prince, there is no trouble in my heart, and I will definitely not be as embarrassed as my husband. As for the thoughts of the children, it is not important at all. They are young and do not understand that it is their business. They are older. If you still don't understand, it's still their business. It may also be that the first move is the same as the first move. Waiting until Yang Ji leaves the Middle-earth divine continent is a dead end. What the Confucian temple and the Lixing think and how to do it has nothing to do with Cui Yang. If you want to follow the rules, you can ask the teacher for your crimes, just come. Qin Pingon gave a hum. Cui Dongshan said, leave aside the question, it is death or alive, I will talk about it later. But Mr. Bai Yujing, the head teacher, did not kill the old fairy in Xinxiao City, Jian for Qin Qingdu on the Great Wall of Qi, not killing the old deaf children, and the Confucian temple rituals not killing Lu Cha, are all a kind of thinking and a thread. Qin Pingon said, I can understand. Cui Dongshan grinned. As a result, he immediately slapped his head and was reprimanded by the husband. No matter how big or small, I dare to call the old sword fairy by his name. Qin Pingon put his hands away and laughed at himself. We are like a friend of mine, and it is considered that the old Lu is not good at others. Fikin, he has to make a potion of regret. First on his side, and then gave Pushun Yunkatang 2 pots of pill, and then I'm afraid I will be asked when Qingjing Mountain opened the furnace for alchemy. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, Ms. Han is planning to ask Qinghu Palace for a set of sitting forgotten pills for Han Lauer? Qin Pingon nodded. Master Han's character and martial ethics are obvious to all. Sir, is this a retribution of virtue? Zong Master Han is actually looking for a reason to have a chance to weigh my fists and feet. This old predecessor knows that Pei Qian will never learn boxing from him. By the way, don't interrupt. This time, you will come forward to discuss the matter with the old Lu. Remember, you must spend money to buy the pill and you can't be rejected by the old Lu to find a way. There are too many favors that you owe, and you don't dare to clear it up in the future. Jingshan is a guest. Mr. just said that he had just returned to the north by Fengyuan Ferry, so he must pass Qingjingshan Qinghu Palace. The students have to accompany Sister Qin and Brother Pang to travel south to the Xinghe River. I changed my mind temporarily. I plan to return to Luopa Mountain alone. I can't let Xiaomo wait for a long time. After all, letting him go to see Beijing alone is still a bit dangerous. Sir, this. Dongshan, when you are a student, you can't always dig at the foot of Mistress Wall without blinking your eyes. It's too shameful. Sometimes you have to share your worries for your husband. What do you think? Sir, I think you think so. Well, my husband thinks the students think so, that's it. Cui Dongshan asked again, walking back to Xindu Mountain? Just rush to Xindu Mountain before dawn. Mr. doesn't seem to be particularly anxious to hurry. When you do things you must be quick and proper and relax. Xiaomo must not persuade Beijing. Mr.'s strict self-discipline and lenient to others, the students learned again. A green shirt and a white shirt, Mr. Student out of the city gate, the board Cui Dongshan snowballed, half-person tall, one-person tall, roof-high, hill-high. The boy in white pushed the huge snowball with both hands and laughed. The green shirt guest on the side cursed naively, and Qin Pingon quickly rolled a snowball of almost the same size. On the Golden Arch Bridge, she did not know when she had already jumped off the railing and stood on the bridge and proposed to Qin Pingon, who is still walking on the railing and practicing boxing. Master, why don't we go to the ascending platform to take a look? Qin Pingon thought for a while, nodded and said, okay. She smiled and said, don't worry, wait a moment. Just when Qin Pingon was at a loss, 5 figures were faintly visible in the distance. She leaned back against the railing lazy and smiled, I miss it very much. She stretched out her hand and pointed, the first master, me, the guy who was killed by me not long ago, and Wan Xiao and Li Lu 10,000 years later. It turned out that what came here was the 5 highest. The ancient heavenly court is the master, the sword bearer, the armored person, the of fire, and the of water. Sword of Coming Chapter 971. The mountains are covered with heavy snow, the ground is white and the wind is cold, and in the dense snow peaks, the branches are broken like broken jade from time to time. In Xiandu Mountain, in addition to suzerain Cui Dongshan, the only person who can freely enter and exit Xiadongshan Taoist Temple is the right guardian of Shangzong Luopa Mountain, Zhou Mili. Even the chief enshrines Miyu and Zhonglu Tsui, and they are the masters of the 2 sword fairy embryos. If they want to enter the dojo, they also need to report for the record. Early this morning, Bai Xian was holding a purple clay pot and still made a pot of wolfberry tea for himself. Although he was pitted by brother Jingqing, he got used to drinking it. Now Bai Xian raised his head and poured it. After taking a big sip of wolfberry tea, he said to the millet grains sitting across the table, Guardian right, I feel bitter, uncle. When talking about drinking tea, an experienced expert, Xiaomi Li immediately said, then drink the wild tea made by the old chef himself, first bitter and then sweet, this is called back sweet. Old Bai Xian Hengqiu sighed, where is it? It's not the same thing. You are still a little bit weak in the right, guardian. I will let brother Jia teach you how to speak. Chai Wu, the girl's film, is all in the Yupu state. Recently I was so worried about the uncle Bai, so that Bai Xian was so worried that he had a taste of wine when he drank tea. This baby Chai Wu has to practice hard work and diligence to jump out of the upper 5 realms. Hard work, mediocre aptitude, can only make up for the weaknesses with diligence. Millet scratched his face, stood up, took the golden pole and hiking stick from the table, and said that he was stubborn to find Chai Wu. Now that Chai Wu is relatively free, Big White Goose slows her practice. Bai Xian waved his hand and said weakly, go, remember to bring me a message to Chai Wu, she is now in the Yupu state, good thing since everyone is a friend, the gift is forgiven, hypocritical, I will help her when I look back. Think of a few fairy-like, domineering and arrogant Taoist names. In the future she will go down the mountain to practice and choose anyone to use. The millet grains accepted and ran all the way to the house on Chai Wu's side. The millet grains had helped prepare the wine jug and bowl. For Chai Wu, half a caddy of wine a day was a matter of 2 bowls. Chai Wu likes to look at the hops, smell the wine, shake the bowl, squint and smile, then raise his hand bowl, raise his head and drink half of the bowl, wipe his mouth, nod his head and do it all in one go. Xiaomi Li always feels that Chai Wu treats drinking more seriously and pays more attention to drinking. Previously, Chai Wu said that she was in the Yupu realm, the 11th realm, and the right guardian was the Dongfu realm and the 6th realm. Then the realms of the two people are added together and then averaged and then rounded up. It is equivalent to 2 people or 9. Circumstance. Inexplicably, he became the golden core immortal mile wide and wide. Chai Wu is such a powerful arithmetic. It's a shame not to be a clerk. Nowadays, several sword repairmen of Bai Xian and the others don't get together very often, and it's obvious that they have been in retreat for a long time. Just like this morning, Xiaomi Li only ran into Bai Xian, and Sun Chun Wang and the others were in retreat. Just like the same long river of time, different people wading in it, but they have different perceptions and situations, and they are different in speed and severity. Chai Wu whispered to Xiaomi Li in private and asked himself if he suddenly became Yupu realm, would others have any ideas? At that time the millet grains said without hesitation, yes, of course there are. For example, when Bai Xian first heard the news, the whole person was stunned. He kept talking to himself over there, saying how there could be someone more talented than himself. In the end he finally figured it out. Yeah, Chai Wu is not a sword repairer. It is normal to practice faster. King Sun Chun practiced more diligently, Qing Chaolu practiced boxing more attentively, He Gu and Yu Shihui both began to scold each other for rubbish. Bai Xian told them to drink with you, the gods of the upper 5 realms, and they had to kneel down next time. Drinking on the ground. Ah, Chai Wu, Bai Xian said, jokes, it's not true. He Gu was not convinced at the time, his face flushed. Bai Xian squinted, here I'll show you how, that's it. Then Bai Xian said that I, a genius, took the lead and knelt on the ground. Why are you two mediocre people unconvinced? Wuxia returned with a cold snort and He Gu laughed angrily. The airy news from the millet grains to Chai Wu was vivid and vivid. Luoposhan's ears to return to the gods, sure enough, is by no means a vain name. Visit the mountain. Chai Wu, I will come to you next time. In fact, there is not a lot of chatting today. Xiaomi Li quickly got up to say goodbye, but left another snowflake money on the table. It is the old rule of the right guardian of Luopa Mountain. Chai Wu is accustomed to it. Taking advantage of the gap between the millet grains, lowering his head and shoulders to carry the golden pole, Chai Wu twisted his wrist and shook his sleeve. Snow money, then smash the snow money that belongs to him. Xiaomi Li raised his head and saw the scene behind, grinned, nodded and went away to patrol the mountain. Chai Wu picked up the bowl again and shook it gently. The water pattern on the bowl was so beautiful that he couldn't bear to drink the last half of the bowl. As for Bai Xian saying that he would help her with the number, Chai Wu just felt that he wanted to drink more. Half a caddy not enough. Earlier I heard Xiaomi Li said that after very careful guessing and deduction, she came up with such a precise result. Because she came here as a guest, every time the door is opened here, some spiritual energy will run away from the world, and it will be scattered accidentally. Going to Mishua Peak outside, so she can't come here often to see them. When she comes, she has to make up some spiritual energy. According to the length of stay, she will leave 1 or 2 or 3 snowflakes of money, otherwise it will be a fake public aid. It doesn't sound good to spread it out. After all, she is on the side of Luopa Mountain, and you must pay attention to the influence on the side of the next sect. But this matter Xiaomi Li only quietly talked to Chai Wu, and Chai Wu said he would help keep it secret. I remember the first time that Xiaomi Li and Chai Wu had a happy chat, turned his head, frowned, pinched and counted with a bitter face 3 snowflake coins from the cotton bag, sniffing his nose and gently placing them on the table superior. Saving a little money can be difficult. Not long after Zhou Mili left at that time, Sect Master Cui and Mi Yu both appeared at Chai Wu's table. Chai Wu was curious, but he didn't know how to ask to be considered appropriate, so he didn't speak at all. Cui Dongshan lowered his head, stacked the 3 snowflake money together, lay on the table and said with a smile, every time you open the door of the dojo, the loss of spiritual energy really counts as fairy money, but it is not snowflake money but Guyu money. Mi Yu said in a bad mood, there is a mountain protection array, the spirits here are overflowing, but you can't get out of the Qingping sword sect boundary. Sect Master Cui, you are too unjust, even the money for the millet grains. It's the snowflake money that was deceived by the millet grains, otherwise Mi Yu would have turned his face on the spot with Cui Dongshan, and the fight would be fine, but Mi Yu inevitably has to sue the hidden officer. Such students really have to control. Cui Dongshan rolled his eyes and said, I'm not helping the right guardian to save money. Otherwise the husband will know about this matter. One of the 3 of us counts as one and no one wants to run. Mi Yu laughed angrily. Sect Master Cui, please make it clear that this matter has something to do with me and Chai Wu. I really want to pull people back and look for Bai Xian. Cui Dongshan stretched out his hand, pressed the palm of his hand against the snowflake money on the table and said with a smile, "Chai Wu, don't lose weight because of small things in the future." Chai Wu nodded. In fact, Sect Master Cui doesn't need to remind this kind of thing. He is not a heartless fool. Zhou Mili is so good and Chai Wu will only be better to Zhou Mili in the future. After Zhou Mili learned that he was in the Yupu realm, except for the first time to congratulate him, why did he often come here afterwards? Isn't it just worrying that Bai Xian and the others have ideas? Worrying that they are estranged from their friends with King Sun Chun. Cui Dongshan said after all he is a very wise-rooted child, he must have studied in his previous life, and the conversation is effortless. Cui Dongshan stood up. Okay, let's not talk nonsense, Chai Wu, since you have already reached the sky in one step. Let's take a few days and read more of the miscellaneous books I threw to you. Sword book Daoju Fu Lu's Hen. First look at the FA, then come to practice hard and continue to work hard. One day you become an immortal, you can call on your friends and go down the mountain to play together. Beautiful. Leaving the dojo with Miyu, Cui Dongshan stood at the entrance of Dongtian and smiled and said, Chief Mi, looking at the millet grains out of pocket, you feel distressed. But besides, don't stop the millet grains. Don't even think about finding a crappie from the beginning. Help Xiaomi Li to make up the snowflake money. Miyu wondered, why is this? Cui Dongshan patted Miyu on the shoulder. Chief Mi, what's the matter? It's more difficult than chatting with a little girl like Chai Wu. Miyu smiled. Listen carefully, I would like to hear more. After Cui Dongshan closed the door, he watched from a distance the little girl in black who swaggered down the steps of Mi Xiefeng. Xiaomi Li, I have been secretly guilty for so many years, and I always feel that I have not been able to help others do something. Miyu hesitated to speak but stopped. Millet has obviously done a lot, and even Miyu will sincerely feel that this little girl who is the guardian of the right guardian of the Luopa mountain is the one who takes care of people the most, at least one of them. This little girl who patrols the mountain every day and always has melon seeds in her pocket is helping the hermit and Luopa Shan, taking care of the subtle hearts of rice grains. Cui Dongshan shook his head. Of course I know what you want to say, but that's just what we think. What I really care about is what Xiaomi Li thinks. Miyu was silent for a moment, suddenly smiling brightly, slapped Cui Dongshan's shoulder again with a slap. Sect Master Cui deserves to be the proud student of the Hermit Lord. Miyu, do you want to listen to your family's words behind closed doors? Please say. I want to ask Miyu to prepare for the sword to be expelled from Qingping Jianzong one day. I don't know why, but I'm both worried and looking forward to it. This means that once Miyu puts all his strength out of the sword when he is in the fairyland, the sword cuts the fairy. In the future, when Miyu is already in the Ascension Realm, he will cut the Ascension Realm with a sword. In the Great Wall of Jianqi, the rice in the two realms of Earth and Immortal and the rice embroidery in Yupu realm are actually two people. In the Haoran world, Qingping Jianzong's chief rice officer, and the Mi Jianxian whose name was removed by King Pingfeng's ancestors' hall, will be two again. Cui Dongshan chuckled and said, this is just in case, it's unlikely that there will be such a day. Cui Dongshan solemnly reminded, this kind of thing, no matter how much you drink in the future, you can't tell my husband to leak. Miyu smiled and said, I'm not a fool. Cui Dongshan looked at Miyu. Miyu was a little embarrassed, put a smile away and said helplessly, compared to Master Hermit and Sect Master Cui, of course I am a fool. Cui Dongshan suddenly lowered his voice and said, Chief Mi, discuss things, trivial matters, really are trivial things that are easy to catch. For Chief Mi it's not a lot of effort. If you don't want to sell it, you just want to know how Chief Mi will take the initiative to talk to those awe-inspiring fairy sisters of Zhou, reminisce about the past, connect with each other? Miyu heard loudly for a while and said with a dry smile, oh, isn't it? If the hidden officer hears about such a thing, the position of the chief will not be guaranteed. It doesn't matter if you don't become one, but if you become one you lose your title and you lose face. Cui Dongshan rubbed his chin, then find a compromise such as, open the mirror flower water moon? If a guest comes to Tongyi's house for a tour of the mountains and water, and then take the initiative to visit Mi Jianxian, we can't stop it. Miyu rubbed his chin. I'm not afraid of the shadow slanting, I'm just reminiscing about the past, why bother with a guilty conscience? The two looked at each other and said nothing. Cui Dongshan hugged the back of his head with his hands. Miyu, in my opinion, the person who is really the most suitable for the second suzerain is not Chao Sunny, but you. It's not that Chao Sunny is bad, but if you want to be the best, you have to see the Qingping sword sect with two completely different styles, and then come to serve as the third lord. The fire is enough. Such words, tell Master Hermit. Master Hermit is not the kind of person who doesn't listen to opinions. How dare I say it right now? It's lighter to get scolded and it's not surprising to be beaten up. Miyu gloated and said, that's right, the hidden officer is now in anger. After a moment of silence, Cui Dongshan murmured while looking at the King Shandu surrounded by the three mountains. Do you know what the real peace world is? There are many people who believe that good people are rewarded. Oh, fools only believe it, but some people believe it. Speaking of this, Cui Dongshan suddenly vibrated his clothes, his sleeves bulging, full of sky breeze, stretched out his fingers to the distance outside the mountain, eyebrows flying, said, Miyu, let us together let this Tongis how more appear such a person. Miyu was also drawn to Dao's heart by the rare and serious Cui Dongshan's sincere words, and his heart was stirred and he said solemnly, let's wait and see. It's just that Cui Dongshan quickly recovered as usual and took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. Chief Mi's words are light, don't just look at it, you have to do something down to earth. Here I have a list here. Take it and see. They are all women who have met Chief Mi, who has been to the Great Wall of Jianqi. I'm not worried about the visitor. The Chief Mi will not even remember the other party's name, school and Taoist name. Miyu gently pushed Cui Dongshan's hand away. Cui Dongshan passed it over again. Miyu pushed away again. Cui Dongshan was annoyed. Miyu can only treat each other sincerely. I remember them all, how can I forget? How dare not to think about them? Cui Dongshan put away the list and sighed. It's no wonder that Mr. Sister wants you, the old cook and Chief Shou, to help check the checks together in the future, so that the Master Sister will not be deceived by the slutty wanderers like you. Miyu smiled and said, as long as I look at my peers, I only need to scan a few eyes and listen to a few words to know how well the other person is, the approximate number of paths he walked through the flowers and the depth of his path. Cui Dongshan tut. See if you can stand it. Miyu stretched out his fingers, twisted a strand of hair on the temples and squinted his eyes and smiled. There are only 3 things in life which are barely worth talking about. The fairyland cuts the monsters, Chunban's high guards the door, drunk and admires the beauties. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, look back and get a good outfit, wear a snow-white robe, wear a long sword, don't wear a jade hairpin on the head, hang a sword gourd, hold a folding fan. Miyu said helplessly, such a flowery but cumbersome deceived a little girl who has not been involved in the world, and cannot deceive a real beauty with vision. Cui Dongshan sneered, cheat. It's hard to tell who lied to her to come to my heart. When Cui Dongshan heard these words he couldn't bear it anymore. He jumped up and beat Miyu with his fists and feet. Miyu covered his face and moved slightly. Cui Dongshan stopped, it really owed a beating, it's better for Xiaomo, Xiaomo is good. Miyu shook his sleeves and said solemnly, Sect Master Cui, you will have a short time when you are young and you will work hard in Dao. Cui Dongshan said in surprise, Chief Mi, there is something, a great talent. Miyu laughed and said, I studied academic studies but I learned a little bit from the hidden officer. Not recently, I just happened to be compiling a collection of sentences and couplets and I am using it now. Cui Dongshan put his hands in his sleeves, stretched out his hands to cover his forehead and said with a smile, look at it, please look at it, how has it ever been a day to build a building on a flat ground? Today's King Shandu has only the embryonic form of the Xianxia ferry. Except for the ferry stop, only a house responsible for registering passenger clearance and issuing boarding jade cards was built. The temporary errand here is the old woman Chiu. Due girl who Chuling, the little girl nicknamed Jealous and Vinegar, is now a direct disciple of Cui Dongshan, the lord of the sect. On the mountain she is indeed considered a step-by-step good fortune. According to the old rules, the old tradition handed down from the Luopashen side, there is a table at the door which is actually prepared by Cui Dongshan specially for Zhou Mili, as a daily rest place for the mountain tour. In fact, Qingping Jinzong is still not well known for the time being, and he has not signed a contract with the major hills and ferry in Tonghishao. Since there is no ferry, naturally no monks will settle here. This table is just a display, but Zhou Mili will be here every day. While sitting for a while, chatting with Mother Chiu and Sister Vinegar and Vinegar, Chiu Dus avenues and feet, the old woman is naturally close to this small water monster in the cave from Luzhoudum Lake in Beiju. But today, after Zhou Mili left the Dongtian Taoist temple, he patrolled the mountain all the way to the outside of the house. He put the golden pole and green bamboo sticks on the table. Without worrying about Mother Chiu, he boiled a pot of boiling water and made 3 bowls of tea. First give the old mother and the vinegar a bowl each. The millet grains took their share and left the house, sitting alone on the bench by the table with their legs hanging in the air, shaking gently, "Good tea and good tea. The old chef himself, the fried tea leaves are good, and the craftsmanship of making tea is even better. Miles complement each other." Zhou Mili chewed on a piece of tea and rubbed his eyes. "Really, there is a visitor? I saw 2 people in the distance, a young man carrying a bamboo box and a chubby follower like slung and dusty, like 2 travelers who ate and slept." Back then Zhou Mili had seen a lot of them on the side of Yaba Lake in his hometown. Zhou Mili suddenly gave birth to a heart of intimacy, with a small face and 2 sparse yellow eyebrows as if full of joy. She hurriedly put down the tea bowl, took off the golden pole and green bamboo stick from the table, leaned against the bench. Zhou Mili walked forward quickly, but did not run too far out of the house, and when she stood still she held it gently with one hand. The rope of the cotton satchel said in a childish voice, "2 distinguished guests, where are they from and where they are going? We are here called King Shandu, which belongs to the Qingping sword sect boundary. I apologize to the guests. There is no ferry for people to travel for." The young man carrying a bamboo box looked at the little water monster with a cotton bag slung. His expression was soft and he said softly, "My name is Xianxia. Are there any taboos in the sect that require outsiders' attention?" Zhou Mili shook his head and said with a smile, "The visitor is a guest, there is no taboo. In fact, as soon as I said it, Zhou Mili regretted it. I blamed my poor business. I just came here to patrol the mountains. I have to ask Mother Chiu and Sister Vinegar. It's over. How to remedy it, what to do." The little girl in black frowned with her 2 sparse eyebrows, sad, and after chatting with the 2 outsiders, she hurried to find Mother Chiu to move the rescuer. Xianxia smiled and said, "This little fairy master, can you let us rest for a while?" Zhou Mili nodded vigorously and Sister Xuanwanshu gave them a blessing, "Please." Walking to the table together, the fat entourage beside Xianxia introduced himself with a smile. "Little fairy teacher, my name is Wuxia. I am fat and thin, a horn of the Taoist horn, an ethereal spirit, not the kind of water chestnut that I eat." Zhou Mili hurriedly replied, "Master Daxian, my name is Zhou Mili, the rice in the bowl, the edible rice." Wu Shou smiled and nodded, glanced at Mi Xiefeng from the corner of his eye, and said in his heart, "Master Pang Chao is looking at this side from the mountain, but it seems that Pang Chao will not take the initiative to go down the mountain to see his master." Xianxia replied with his heart, "If you see it, there is nothing to talk about. If you don't see it, you don't have to be embarrassed. Wu Shou, if you can meet the young hermit, you should not ask the old things to be brought up again. Don't be pleasing. It makes us look like we are going to collect debts." This Wu Shou next to him was the person who spoke to Baoping Yijo Baozhai in the past. In fact, he has some connections with Luopashan, because Nujiata's earliest Baozhai was Wu Shou, who personally laid the foundation with the Song clan of Dai in the first place. Wu Shou was too courageous, lacking courage, or just staring at the visible way of making money. As a result, he hadn't been in business for a few years, so he ditched his staff early and closed the door fortunately, leaving only an empty shell, which is considered cheap. Together with Beiyue Weibo, he took over the Luopa mountain of Nujiashan. The tops of the hills belonged to others, so naturally they included those immortal buildings in the bag. But for so many years, Luopashan has not really started the fairy business there. At the beginning, the school had a weak foundation and there was no stock in hand. Later, a route to the southeast of Luzhou in Beiju was opened. The business just started to pick up. After the war, the entire Nujiadu was requisitioned by the Dali military, and the business operation was completely stranded. The situation has improved in recent years, but there is still a lack of a backbone for planning, living in secluded and doing business with people. Like a mountain. Because Wu Shou made his own proposal to withdraw most of Beiping's his Beipingzu. Such a thing, it was not a pleasant affair with the Song family of Dali. After that, Bao Baozhai was completely lost in Beipingzu. As long as the Song clan of Dali does not change his mouth for a day, Baozhai will not dare to open in Aquarius without authorization. Even south of Chidu, the country has been gradually restored. Baozhai still does not dare to touch this mold. After an embroidered tiger walked away, a hidden official came, not to mention that these two were still brothers in the same discipline. After waiting for the 2 merchants to take their seats, Zhou Mili asked, Mr. Zhang, Master Wu, would you like to have tea? Wu Shou glanced at the tea bowl on the table. The tea leaves and the water used for making tea were not particular about it. He shook his head and smiled. No need. Xianxia said, Thank you, Master Zhou, bring me a bowl of hot tea. Zhou Mili immediately stood up and smiled. Okay, Mr. Zhang, wait a moment. Wu Shou wondered. This little water monster is not very bright when you look at it. It doesn't look like a disguise. It's just a cave mansion. She is really the right guardian of the Luapa mountain and can be worshipped as a mountain guard? Aren't you afraid of outsiders watching jokes? Xianxia frowned slightly. A white rainbow swept across the ground and took a seat, sitting on a bench, beckoning and shouting loudly, Guardian right, don't forget to count the 2 bowls of Mr. and me. In addition, there was another green-shirt guest standing behind Wu Shou with one hand on the fat man's shoulder. My family Zhou Mili is the guardian of the Luapashen right guard. You are an outsider, do you have an opinion? It was Qin Pingon and Cui Dongshan who returned to Xiandushan slowly all the way. Wu Shou was stunned on the spot. Didn't he speak with his own heart? Why are you being heard? As soon as Wu Shou was about to move, he noticed the hand on his shoulder and pressed it down, and the movement of the aura in the whole human body became stagnant, like a river freezing. The man continued to laugh and said, I want to ask you something. Xianxia clasped his fists and said, Qinshan Wu is thin and unobstructed. He is so offensive. I will apologize for him first. Qin Pingon squinted at the old patriarch and interrupted Xiangxi's words directly. This is Qingping sword sect, you can't help him. Cui Dongshan sullen his face and hold back his smile. Good, this one is really his own good brother, and Wu Shou is a tough guy who dares to cross here in Qingshan. If you say millet grains, you will have a big brain. Rotten. Take a look how good my husband is usually, and he always respects his predecessors. This makes you angry. You deserve it, and you shouldn't say it badly about our millet grains. After Qin Pingon held with one hand, he put one hand on Wu Shou's shoulder, leaned forward, bowed his head and smiled and said, If you pretend to be deaf and dumb like this again, I'm going to give a dismissal order. Wu Shou tremblingly said, Forgive the sins, the hermits forgive sins, unintentional words, many offenses. I am obsessed with ghosts and my mind is muddled. Millet and Hu Chuling brought 3 bowls of tea together. The vinegar gently put down the 2 bowls of tea, and the millet grains were responsible for serving Xianxia. She grinned at the Goodman Mountain owner. This Mr. Zhang is an outsider and he should have enough etiquette and serve them with both hands. Qin Pingon narrowed his eyes with a smile, nodded gently and understood. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, Guardian right, you go back to the house with the vinegar. The outside is cold and it's not warmer than the house. Zhou Mili frowned. I am a big monster afraid of the cold? What a joke. It's just a flash of light, and I know Goodman Mountain mainly talks with people about business, big business. Qin Pingon patted Wu Thin on the shoulder and sat on the remaining bench. Just now when Mr. White Goose got up, he started to wipe the bench beside him with his sleeves and was busy. Qin Pingon said a few words straightforwardly. Mr. Zhang has finished drinking his tea and can leave. There is no need to talk about the reopening of Bayaguozai in Aquarius Island. Even if the Dali court nodded, even if it was Emperor Songhe's promise, it would still be inaccurate. I said no. Xianxia smiled as usual and took a sip of tea. Wu Shou smiled bitterly. Lord Qinshan, is it because of my reckless words that I want to have a bad relationship with the whole Baozhai? Xianxia smiled and said, This kind of personal grievances don't involve my burden. Wu Shou's heart tightened and he nodded vigorously. I'm the one who said the wrong thing again. Xianxia's bad temper. This time it can be regarded as a real experience. Cui Dongshan sighed. Xianxia, you really brought a living ancestor by your side. It was originally a good idea and the opportunity of another village to be bright, but it made such troubles worse. No, the 2 continents business was lost all of a sudden. I've already slapped myself with 2 big mouths and then slapped old ancestor Wu a few times. Zhou Mili stood by the door of the house, and when she saw someone finish drinking the tea in the bowl, she was ready to add water at any time. As for what was talked about at that table, she couldn't hear or eavesdrop. Most of the big white goose shook her arms again with a surgical magical power. Look, the big white goose winked at herself. Alas, they are all the masters now. Nothing is right. Let's take a look at the good guys who are talking and laughing with people. It is estimated that this door-to-door business is pretty sure. Another sword repairer came to transform the rainbow and landed at the table. Cui Dongshan didn't think it was too big to see the excitement. He sniffed and his eyes complained, "Chief Me, this old ancestor Wu just verbally scolded our millet heads. It's not alive." Miyu was originally smiling, but his face was gloomy when he heard the words and he stared at the sluggish face. "Wu Laozu, oh? That's the realm of Yuan Ying's soaring courage. After talking I will find something for myself. Go to the ground and dig a hole." Zhou Mili saw Miyu quietly raised his hand, hooked his hand. "Yumi, come here, the good guy Mountain Lord is negotiating business with people. We two are not this material, we don't mix." Miyu's face changed again, his eyes were gentle and he walked to the door of the house. During the period he turned his head and looked at Xianxia and Wu Shou. Xianxia was okay. He still looked at ease. Wu Shou only felt like falling into an ice cave. Xianxia finished drinking the tea in the bowl, turned around, smiled and lifted the white bowl in his hand. Zhou Mili hurriedly took the stove above the brazier, rushed to the table, took the tea bowl, poured it 7 or 8 minutes full, and then handed it back to Mr. Zhang. Xianxia thanked the little girl again and laughed. "Next time you make tea and treat guests, you need to be careful about taking water." "I don't care. I'm used to eating and sleeping. As long as I can quench my thirst, it's a good tea. But I have to murmur in my heart, it's just that. The water for making tea in the future is better to draw water from the clear springs in the mountains. If I remember correctly, there are good water sources in the 3 old mountains. Is this particular about drinking tea? Is that true?" Zhou Mili glanced at the good man, Qin Pingon nodded, and the girl in black immediately smiled and thanked Mr. Zhang. "Teached." Xianxia took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "Luopashan is really different." Xianxia held the tea bowl in both hands and smiled. "I'm officially introduced. My name is Xianxia. I was born in Luoyang. I was delisted by the genealogy after breaking the ancestral precepts of the ancestral hall. The number of roads is bigger than Mr. Fan's foresight and Lu Keishan's family business." Next to him, Wu Shou Daohao Lingjiao was once the person in charge of Beipingzu branch of Beipingzu. Wu Shou only stared at the abacus and the account book. Never looked up to see the long-term trend. The only credit is the accidental collision, leaving those buildings for Nujiadu, and now it belongs to Luapa Mountain. It is really fortunate so many years, to meet with Baozhai from all continents. Only this matter allows Wu Shou to stand up straight and talk, blowing a few words of cowhide without drafting. Wu Shou's face was bitter. The owner rarely talks to others in this way, not to mention that he had previously warned himself not to mention Nujiadu. However, Zhangji's last few words are not a hypocrisy. Wu Shou does often show off the matter with his colleagues, but only slightly changed the facts, saying how he met the young hermit and how he met. At that time Qin Pingon was just a young kiln worker, but Wu Shou looked so insightful, and I saw that the other party was not easy at first glance. On the wine table I felt that June is not a thing in the pool. Qin at that time Ping'an didn't believe it but just toasted with himself and had a big bowl. Too much talk and in the end Wu Shou himself almost believed it. Don't think that this inferior method is so funny. In the business field it is really possible to exchange for real money. Qin Pingon said, "I can't control Tongyi's how." Zhangji was also obviously relieved. Wu Shou lowered his head and wiped the sweat on his forehead. As for whether or not to behave to others, dumb eats coptis and knows bitterly. Zhangji was also a straightforward person and asked directly, "Dare to ask Mr. Qin, apart from your Qingping sword sect, how many powers can talk in this Tongyi's Hao area?" Cui Dongshan shook the white bowl. "The news is so good. Is it from Yugizong's side or from the household department of the Daquan dynasty, that the wind has leaked?" Qin Pingon finished drinking his tea and said with a smile, "Cui Dongshan is in charge now. You guys are talking about you." He got up and left and walked towards the door of the house. Qin Pingon touched the head of the millet grains and smiled. "You don't need to continue to help add water." Miyu has arms around his chest, back against the wall, always staring at that Wu Shou. Qin Pingon said with no anger, "Well, the eyes can kill people, how come I don't know that Sword Immortal is so bullish?" Miyu smiled awkwardly. After entering the house, Qin Pingon smiled and greeted Qiu Du and Hu Chuling. They sat by a brazier in the house, stretched out their hands to warm the fire, hesitated and said, "Millet grains, someone just thought. Well, anyway, they said something. It's not a good jerk, I happened to listen to it." Mealy moved the small bench, approached the good man Mountain Lord, stretched out his hand to cover his mouth and said in a low voice, It's not that Mr. Zhang, right? Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. It's the fat man named Wuxia. Mr. Zhang still likes you very much. Millet Grains suddenly raised their eyebrows and said, if I get it, I know it won't be Mr. Zhang. The little girl in black shook her head and her shoulders fell together. She was quite happy, as if Wu Shou's opinion, no matter what she said, was ignored by her. The little girl was happy to patronize. Just like she often looks at the scenery on the banks of the downhill cliffs alone. If you are unhappy, just float away with the clouds. If you are happy like a bird on a branch, stay as a guest. Qin Pingon couldn't help standing up, but it was Yes turned to panic and coughed. Hi my sir, it's really not possible, let me do it. Zhou Mili stretched out his hand, gently grabbed the sleeve of the good man Xianxia, shook his head, grinned as if saying, how can I be unhappy in my own home? The little girl scratched her face, then began to whisper to the good guy, saying that she and Pei Qian would also secretly say that Sister Tsun was silly. Qin Pingon smiled and rubbed the head of the millet grain. What did the right guardian say? Why didn't I hear clearly? I don't know, I can't remember. Zhou Mili, ha. Good guy Mountain Lord, ha. Zhou Mili, ha. Good guy Mountain Lord, you won. Miyu looked at the hidden officer, sighing, that is, the hidden officer will not touch the flowers. Otherwise he and Chief Zhou will not be an opponent. Qin Pingon turned his head and cursed, get out of your bastard. Miyu was stunned, wondering how the hermit Sama heard his own voice. On a dinner table in Luapa Mountain, sitting Zhu Lian Qin Wanshu, a girl with a mink hat under the pseudonym Xiego. Xiego sighed, Mr. Zhu, I thought that you are in the mountains. With the abilities of the hermit, you must have thousands of men and horses. There are dozens or hundreds of sword repairers, hundreds of chi trainers, thousands of pure martial arts, plus some outside disciples, handyman slaves, etc. The young hermit gave an order where to fight. If you have nothing to do, go to Dali capital to show off your power and take a stroll around. I didn't expect that there would be so many people on Luapa Mountain. Xiaomo was really too not willing to show any strength, probably still lazy. They don't die. She and Xiaomo plus the nameless name that they didn't think about are not bad, but they are all alone. As for the dirt of the covered baby and her aunts also don't like the excitement, but the other Wang Yuwu will definitely reopen the sect. The bird is like, the killer is not enough and the skill is not too high. Zhu Lian smiled and said, in fact there is a lotus root blessed land, plus there will be more people. Xiego made no secret of his sneer, put a large amount of chopsticks and vegetables into his mouth and said vaguely, that can be counted as a person? If you add it together, can you be a Jade Poo world? Qin Wanshu heard the words, but silently lowered his head to chew the rice. Zhu Lian smiled as usual. One side nurtures another person, although each has its own life, it is life anyway. Thanks to the dog, he just clicked the chopsticks like flying absent-mindedly and said in a perfunctory, reasonable. After that, Wanshu packed up his dishes and went to the stove. Zhu Lian smiled and reminded, thank you girl, don't test people's hearts casually in the future. We Luopashan, although there are not many rules, but there are few rules, no matter who it is, family members or guests, you have to pay a little attention to them. Miss Xia is a newcomer, so I have to make this clear. Xiego hiccuped and grinned. I see, you do what you like when you come to the village and the guest is as you please, I understand the truth. She stood up and walked out of the house. Walk for a walk 100 steps after a meal and live to 99 ba to live to 99. Zhu Lian shook his head and said nothing. It's not scary if you don't know how to pretend to understand, but you're afraid of understanding but pretend that you don't know how to pretend to understand. In the final analysis, this is just Bai Jing who came to find Xiaomo, and still doesn't think this Luapa mountain is really scary, so apart from Xiaomo, there is nothing that Bai Jing really cares about. Even the Taoist immortal of the gatekeeper. In Bai Jing's eyes, maybe it's only half of it. After Xiego walked out of the house, he pulled the corners of his mouth. It was a pity that Mr. Zhu was a scholar and he was a little more disciplined. After that, Xiego started wandering around the peaks of the Luapa mountain. For example, he would go to the bamboo building. While the girl in the pink skirt was cleaning the house on the first floor, if nothing had happened, she went straight across the threshold and walked in to take a look. Wanshu, who was busy at the time, just stopped his work and waited until the girl Xia left the house. Wanshu didn't say anything in the end. Xiego went to the back mountain again and sat on the roof, watching the two young men and women practicing boxing there. When they noticed the uninvited guest on the roof, They immediately stopped walking and looked at the mink hat with doubts. Girl, Xiego just stretched out his hand and motioned to continue practicing your punches as long as he didn't exist. Xiego just wandered like this for a few days, went to the top of the mountain and lay in a daze over the railing. She was still wandering around in the square outside the gate of the Patriarch of Jisei Peak. In the twilight that day, Xianwei planned to finish work on time. Xianwei usually went to the old mountain cook to eat and drink, but occasionally he would cook a small stove for himself and cook himself, which is called self-reliance and adequate food and clothing. The main reason is that Xianwei felt that going to the old steward Zhu, climbing down the mountain and going back and forth was a bit troublesome and delayed his reading. If scholars don't read more books, what can they do? Xianwei usually takes the bamboo chair back to the house of the Dafeng brothers on time when the gatekeeper arrives. He doesn't slow down his work and never waits much. Now there are no foreign guests in Luopishan anyway. 1 inch of time and 1 inch of gold. Read one more book. Even if you turn a few more pages, you will increase your knowledge. As soon as Xianwei was about to put away the bamboo chair, he saw the girl in the mink hat walking down the mountain looking unhappy. Xianwei put his sleeves in his sleeves and stood there, intending to chat with the little girl casually before returning to the house to continue reading. Xianwei waited for her to approach the gate of the mountain, said hello with a smile and asked, "Is this girl Xuetzin practicing boxing?" Xiego swayed all the way to the foot of the mountain, rubbed the sable hat and shook his head. "I don't know what to learn. I don't know what's going on. It may be that I accidentally said something wrong. This has annoyed Mr. Zhu. I drove down the mountain and sent it to a shop in Qilong Alley as an errand." Xianwei was greatly surprised. The old steward Zhu had such a good temper. "Miss Xie, how much evil did you make and how big a demon did you make Mr. Zhu feel unhappy?" Xianwei hesitated for a moment but couldn't help but said, "Xie girl, in our mountain there is always no taboo. What is going on? I will help you review the situation and find the fault. I will accompany you. Go up the mountain together, apologize to the old cook, admit a mistake and stay on the mountain." Xiego stared blankly at this fake Taoist wearing a cotton preaching robe. Except for the wooden hairpin above his head, this servant is really not the Taoist priest in any way. If this was found by that mysterious Wang Yiwu and Xiaomo was not on the mountain, wouldn't he have a crunch end? Xianwei smiled and said, "Thank you girl, how difficult it is to admit a mistake. Don't feel embarrassed, it won't be a shame." Xiego blinked. Could it be a fool? He and Xiaomo, a small group of them of similar age and seniority, apart from the top 3 in killing power and defense, the rest of the old rubbish. In fact, according to the calculation method of ordinary monks, they are not so rubbish. They are good at each. For example, Wang Yiwu with the name Mountain Monarch has the most complicated spells, saves his life and steals sneak attacks. They're all good at them. The reason why they have a sword on their back is because Wang Yiwu is still a half-hanging sword. Xiu, although it is extremely impure, the 2 flying swords that were refined were both grabbed halfway, but swordsmanship is barely considered swordsmanship. In addition, Wang Yiwu's Dao name is not taken for nothing. The so-called mountain monarch does not mean that the old thing is in the mountains and can learn from the saints of the Sanjiao family. It is related to the human harmony at the foot of the mountain. To make it simple, as long as the world is not good, the more people who can't survive under the mountain, the higher Wang Yiwu's Taoism and deeds. Now the book says that harsh government is more fierce than tigers. Therefore Wang Yiwu has a natural advantage over the others who woke up. So when I went to see Bai Zhe before, the old man deliberately sullen his face, stealing joy along the way. If Wang Yiwu wakes up early, he can hide in the Howren world early and carefully select a hidden dojo such as the Fuyao Island that used to be war-torn, and one who is not careful really hopes that Wang Yiwu will be among the 14 realms. Just because of the opportunity for the harmony of this relationship, it is in the meaning of the Tao name. But Xiego has always felt that this old thing that is willing to learn everything and nothing is not worthy of the excellent title of Shanjun itself. Guani, it's the same thing. If she followed the wild Jiazi account earlier and rushed to the battlefield in the awe-inspiring world, she would clean up the mess and then eat it all the way. It might be more useful than the Beiying. In the final analysis, they all blamed Master Bai Zhe for being confused when encountering major events, returning to the wilderness too late and waking up a few of them too late. The guy who is now aliased as Hutu is probably deliberately disgusting Bai Zhe. It's no wonder that after seeing a few of them, Bai Zhe seemed to linger on Hutu the longest. Are you stupid? Ha and Master Bai Zhe are witty, not looking for death. Fortunately, the wild world lacks top combat power, otherwise it will belch. The little master back then was famous for being reasonable and good-tempered. Bai Zhe was about the same and easy to talk, but the problem was how terrible these two were, unreasonable and hard to talk. Bai Jing had seen it with his own eyes. Xiago laughed and said, knowing a mistake can improve Mo Dian. I don't understand the basics. Xianwei smiled and couldn't help but slander in his heart. How could she look at this little girl? She didn't look like a sincere person. She knew a hammer. Xiago walked along the mountain road towards the town. Xianwei carried the bamboo chair to the house, intending to separate the narration notes of the Dafeng brothers into a separate book, and his job will be promoted in the future. If you don't be this wind and sun hard-working janitor, you have to save some treasure for the next job. From Zheng Dafeng to himself and from generation to generation the predecessors planted trees to enjoy the shade, which is also a good talk. In the spring season, it rains over the mountains, verdant like drops. Early in the morning, Xianwei shrank and was sitting on a bamboo chair dozing off, dazed as if he heard someone calling Dao Master Xianwei, and finally opened his eyelids. Xianwei saw a familiar face. The yellow hat and blue shoes turned out to be Mr. Xiao Mo back. Xianwei hurriedly sat up straight, reached out his hand and patted his cheek, embarrassed. It's easy to get sleepy. Xiao Mo smiled and said, the season is right now. It is the time of the spring festival, the hardship of Taoist Master Xianwei. Starting tomorrow I will visit the door for a few days. Taoist Master Xianwei just keeps up the spirit. Xianwei hurriedly waved his hand. If it doesn't happen, it won't happen. How dare you let Mr. Xiao Mo look at the door? How decent is it? Mr. Xiao Mo's kindness leads me. I promise that the door and the book are correct. Xiao Mo sat on the bamboo chair beside him and let out a long breath. Xianwei asked, Mr. Xiao Mo, did Qin Shanju not come back together? Xiao Mo squeezed a smiling face and said, the son has something to do with Tongyi's Hao, so he will return later. Xianwei was a little strange and asked tentatively, is something on my mind? Xiao Mo thought for a while and said, I have to meet someone I don't want to see and I can't avoid it, so I feel a little worried. This Bai Jing who had been entangled with him was probably Xiao Mo's only troublesome hand. Xianwei nodded. Everyone has their own worries, it is normal. Xianwei didn't think he could solve anything, put his hands on his knees, patted lightly, remained silent for a long time, and hummed a folk song from his hometown. The mountain is a journey, the water is a journey, the wind is changing and the snow is changing. Sorrow near the road, sorrow far away, with a sound in the south and a sound in the north. Think long, hate long, river flow, river flow. Dreams are hard to come true, meanings are hard to pacify. The east hill is green, the west hill is green. The New Year's Eve shop has an extra shop assistant. Of course, Sure the shopkeeper has no objection, just adding a pair of tableware. The little mute is not very happy anymore. Don't think about it, there is another bastard. As a result, after only getting along for a day, the girl with weird name made Zhou Xian look at her with admiration, full of affection. She was more concerned about making money than Zhou Xian. Xiago and Sure first borrowed the account books accumulated over the years, and calculated a daily amount of silver in the account. Then she went straight to the point and said that in the future the shop must tell her. After the accounts, the 50% of the income exceeding the money goes to her. Sure doesn't care. Zhou Xian feels that this transaction is not a loss, even if the resolution is passed. Then Xiago blocked the door, but all the guests who went to the Chaotu shop next door would be dragged to the New Year's shop to take a look. And Zhou Xian looked at her posture and wanted to go to Huaihuang County. Signs were posted on the walls of the street. Xiago and the two of them talked about their own thoughts. They said that Nujiadu can set up a sign to attract customers to the cakes of the New Year's Eve shop. Anyway, Nujiadu, they are all on the top of Yuluapa mountain. On the wooden sign, besides the specific address of the New Year's shop in the town, what kinds of cakes are there that have been tasted by the Sword Immortal, the Sovereign Lord and the Emperor of a certain country? Absolutely. Such as Ruan Qiong of Longquan Jianzong, the current Lord Lu Xianyang, the Godzong Qizhen, the King Song Jisan of the Dali domain, and the last Taifujiang water Yanghua, make up 10 of his mother's famous, in short, treasure bottles. Whoever is famous in Zhou is honored to be on the list. Regardless of whether they have eaten it or not, if someone scolds the door, I apologize to him. Let's change another brand. In fact, there is no need to change it, just erase the name. Ro was stunned to hear this kind of business. Zhou Junshan's eyes brightened. If it weren't for Ro to stop him, the little mute had already gone to the backyard to look for wooden boards and prepare pens. The little mute has seen someone who makes money fiercely, but has never seen someone so shameless to make money. In the words of the name Xiego, people can't even make money for the sake of face. The little mute felt at ease all of a sudden, and the child rarely had a smiling face on the side of outsiders. I'm getting acquainted. Xiego is going to read the book with his children today. Zhou Junshan likes to read those strange novels. Xiego is different. I like Qingqing, my gifted man and beautiful woman, the most. Xiego reads the book and asks the little dumb, Zhou Junshan, since you are the only grandson of Lord Qinshan now, you can only work hard to earn some money here all year round. It's a bit too miserable, don't you feel wronged? In the wild world, as a direct descendant of the founder of the mountain, he would not have the face to mess with the mountain if he didn't get a few moths at home or outside. The child grinned. I am not familiar with Qin Pingon. I haven't seen each other a few times in these years and I haven't talked a lot about it. I don't take him seriously anyway. Xiego nodded, ambitious. The girl in the mink hat suddenly closed the book, wiped her mouth and laughed. Zhou Junshan thought it was weird. He seemed to be walking down the street with Deng's apprentice and seeing a beautiful woman. Xiego walked out of the counter, helped the mink cap, poked his head out from the door and looked at the guy who walked out of Qilong Alley, yellow hat, blue shoes, green bamboo stick. Hey, handsome. Xiaomo didn't stop, squinted his eyes and said with heart, Bai Jing, what are you doing here in Haoran world? Xiego wrinkled his face. Miserable, guilty. Xiaomo's rhetoric is different from the kind of guilty man in the book who abandons the vows of the Huiqianyuexian League. Xiaomo moved forward slowly. Stop pretending, is it interesting? Thanks to the dog, he stretched his waist, jumped out of the threshold, stood in the middle of Kalongxiang Street and said straightly, to be a dead soldier for Qin Pingan, does it mean to exist? Xiaomo nodded. Xiego said angrily, then do you know that if Qin Pingan Qing Tu was engraved, if it was not the word Ping but replaced with Ping or Qing, what would happen to you? Xiaomo still nodded. The sword bearer, when he found himself, said it clearly. Instead of asking about the sword, Xiaomo neither dared nor willing. After all, a swordsmanship, most of it came from one of this ancient supreme being. Escape? Can't escape. Xiego shook his head. I don't know you anymore. Xiaomo sneered and said, Bai Jing, we are not familiar at all. The former Bai Jing, the real she, was not the girly appearance she is now. Very beautiful and full of wildness. Xiego smiled and asked, find a place to have a little wine? After slumbering for thousands of years and then waking up, she found that the combat power of the top monks as it was today did not seem to have changed much, but the winemaking skills were indeed much higher. In that Jiuquan sect, in addition to a few signature wines, more than 30 kinds of the most famous Xinjia wines from the wild, drank very happily. Xiaomo shook his head and said, drinking mistakes. Walk up the steps of Qilong Alley and go to the top. It's best if you agree. If you don't agree, you and I will go overseas. A gas trainer can drink alcohol like ordinary people. If you want to have a good drink, you have your own means. As for how long you want to sleep after getting drunk, it depends on the personal preference of the gas trainer. Anyway, you can wake up early. At the time of arrival, the great monk could still rely on this to rejuvenate his mind and stay drunk for several decades. Xiego curled his lips and said, Qin Pingan is not here, so what could be wrong? Xiaomo was expressionless. Xiego stomped and slapped his feet, shaking his hands arbitrarily. Isn't it because you didn't call Master Qin you want to kill me for the sake of an outsider? Call the son. Call the son of an uncle. Xiego has been here in Luapa Mountain for so long, and he hasn't been able to see the other side. He has a big arrogance. When he is Baizé or Little Master. Xiego said straightforwardly, Qin Pingan deliberately left you to see me alone. I don't like this kind of person, this kind of temper. I don't worry about you mixing with him. According to the book here, this means that the son of a daughter can't sit down. It is true that Lu Yao knows that Molly has seen people's hearts for a long time. In the Great Wall of Sword Chi, he dared to show his face, earn some military exploits and earn some reputation and said, after all, don't worry, Qin Qing will sit on the top of the city behind him. He will surely protect his life. Look, when you get here you'll be exposed. Are you afraid that I will kill him and worry that you won't be able to keep him? Xiaomo said, The sun is going to see someone temporarily. It's very important. A Beijing can't be compared at all. Xiego wondered. Who? There is such a person in Tong Yezhou? If I remember correctly, Tongyi's top combat power is far inferior to Baijiluzu and Nampasuzu. The two climbed up the level together and Xiao Emo said, "It has nothing to do with you." Xiego said, "Really don't drink?" Xiao Emo hesitated. "It's on the side of Qilong Alley. It's just for drinking in my grass to head shop. There is wine in the old fairy Jia. I will say hello to him when I look back. Borrow a few pots of wine. Old fairy Jia, I don't need to make up afterwards if it's not a matter of calculation." Xiego rolled his eyes. "I'm so angry with my old lady. Drink a drink and have so many ways if you are proud of it. Is this considered famous? How about the little Mo who wandered the world alone with his sword, the little Mo who brewed with the master of the Bixiao cave of Luobaotan, and the sword repairer who had almost done Yangji?" Xiego wrinkled his nose as if saying, "Xiaomo Xiaomo, I'm so sad that you have become like this." Xiao Emo turned a blind eye to this and walked towards the Chaotu shop. Xiego was suddenly hungry at the sheep, but Xiao Emo held her head. "Bai Jing." In an instant both Xiao Emo and Bai Jing's hearts trembled, and the two ascending realm sword repairmen turned their heads and looked at the highest point of Qilong Alley almost at the same time. Someone was sitting over there. Standing beside him was a little boy with a stubborn stature, holding a sword in both hands, smiling but not smiling, overlooking Bai Jing and Xiao Emo. And the gentleman with his eyes smiled and said, "Be busy first when we don't exist." Sword of Coming Chapter 972. This long riding alley in Huaihuang County suddenly became a soaring platform. At the top is still a woman leaning a sword and a man sitting on the steps next to her. Both sides have a pair of golden eyes. The whole body skin of the mink hat girl Xiego instantly drifted away like dust, and then condensed into a slender woman with a brand new appearance. Bai Jing held swords in both hands, raised his head high and looked at each other at the top. "This is the true face of Bai Jing." Xiao Emo said, "I advise you to take the sword." Bai Jing squinted and said with a smile, "It's a rare opportunity. I just stretch my hands and feet. I really don't believe it. They can really drag me into the long river of time 10,000 years ago. If the ability is so great, I want today is to complete the sword repair of an ascended realm 10,000 years later, from becoming a world where the patriarch of the three religions sits, and dragging it back to the old mountains and rivers 10,000 years ago. The 15th realm would not be able to do it." On the top of the steps, the man with one hand on his cheek was smiling, and he whispered softly, "Wei Xiaoma is still facing Bai Jing. It seems there is a play." She nodded and said, "See the true love in adversity." Although Xiao Emo couldn't hear the words of the two beings at the top, but looking at the own son with a familiar face and an unfamiliar aura, it didn't seem like he had said anything good. The Qin Pingan smiled and squinted, waved goodbye to Xiao Emo gently and smiled. "Xiao Emo, take a moment, don't be cooked with raw rice." The vision dissipated and Xiao Emo and Bai Jing were in Qilong Lane again. Xiego helped his head on the mink hat and sneered, "It's a fake pretending to be a ghost. It scares me." Xiao Emo looked embarrassed and innocent. How could he have the illusion of being caught and raped in bed? Xiego complained, "Xiao Emo, I blame you. That existence was found along your kendo veins. It's like being in the lower reaches of a long river of time, waiting for the rabbits and catching the two of us." Between words, Xiego raised his hand and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Xiao Emo glanced and Xiego immediately explained, "Even if it is fake, it will scare people. The world is just so big. You can't see you with your head down. There is no need to narrow the road. Go drink, press down." Shocked. When they arrived at the Chaotu shop, Xiao Emo asked Jura to help bring 2 pots of glutinous rice wine, and smiled and said that there was no need to go to the kitchen to cook. They had a place to just drink. Xiego sat cross-legged on the bench and drank a large bowl of glutinous fermented rice. He sighed, "It's not easy to earn some hard money, don't you know, Xiaomo? After I came to Howren in order to save some money this way, it was so hard to walk. I was digging herbs on the hill and setting up a stall under the hill. I was almost molested by someone. It was so miserable." Xiaomo drank a sip. "Those who really can't make money are qualified to say hard work." Xiego said angrily, "This is really like a person." Xiaomo put down the wine bowl and asked in his heart, Do you dare to kill Ascension Realm? Xiego blinked. Are you sleeping, stupid? Dare to dare, what's not to dare? The question is whether it can be done, and here is not a wild world. You just think that I was caught by the little master and then accompany Lu Cha to a prison meal in the Gongda forest. That's right, if you don't see me you can stay out of sight and out of mind. Speaking of the jerk, the negative guy is more powerful than Feijian poking his heart. Xiego sniffed and wiped the corners of his eyes. Seeing that Xiao Mo across the table was indifferent, he also felt that it was meaningless, so he changed his expression. Lazily said, let's talk about it, kill someone. Xiao Mo said, Old Master Fu Yang, stop. Xiego suddenly said, it turns out that it is her. She is not bad at escaping and she is not good at fighting, not good at fighting. She has a long chest and has no cultivation skills, and she is blinded by the Taoist story, so she will bother her when she looks at it. If the mother-in-law hadn't been left here by the Confucian temple now in the wild world, one of Yangzi's natal supernatural powers. Xiego has been greedy for many years and he is not suitable for Yangzi, but Xiego learns magic powers, has a very good understanding and practice extremely fast. And this path is not for Yangzi, it is quite appropriate, but if Xiego learns it and breaks it up and smashes it, it can just fill Xiego's omission in a certain avenue. If you are not careful you will really be in the 14th realm. In fact, when Xiao Mo chased and killed Yangzi, Bai Jing followed from a distance, silently. After Yuan Shou, the ancestor who moved the mountain, appeared, she followed. Dare to beat my man, asked me if Bai Jing agreed? 2 on 2 is fair. Their pair of gods and relatives, dealing with a pair of concubines, is not enough to catch them. How can they lose? It's a pity that Xiao Mo didn't want to join hands with him, so he just left. Xiego said, I have an agreement with Master Bai and Confucian Temple. But well, since you spoke I can consider it. The premise is that you have to guarantee that I can leave Howren world alive. Xiego stretched out a palm and raised an eyebrow at Xiao Mo. What are the benefits? My brothers will settle accounts. If we are Taoists we won't talk about this. The problem is not us. Xiego wiped his mouth. I am turning a lot of books now. The geniuses and beautiful ladies in the books and the novels of Jianghu romance are not all in this way. The hero saves the United States, the great kindness, and the little girl has no choice but to repay. I am willing to recommend myself a pillow seat and put it on both of us, the same reason. Xiao Mo was about to talk. Qin Pingon quietly took a seat at the wine table and smiled. Xiao Mo, don't agree with your body. As for Xiego, someone stretched out his hand to hold the mink cap on the girl's head. I didn't care about you just now, but the result is still so leathery. Xiego shrank his neck, his eyes complaining. Xiaoma, hurry up and be fair to me, I am timid and afraid of misery. A cultivator wandering thousands of miles is a hammer. Aren't these two wandering for thousands of years? Shindu Mountain, King Shandu. Cui Dongshan broke his fingers and started counting and reported the names of several allies one by one. Dequan Yao family, Pushun Yunkatang, Tapingshan Yuguazong, Ias Hao Lu family, and Yu family of the Xuanmi dynasty of China. 6 for the time being, that's it. The rich contribute the money, the powerful contribute, perform their duties, have a clear division of labor, love each other, and help each other in the same boat. Zhang Ji nodded. It's a good match. The average ascended realm cultivator can't afford such a great situation. This is the potential background of a hidden official of the last generation of the Great Wall of Jianqi. That Wu Shou's eyelids trembled, especially when he heard the Lu family from Ias how he wanted to retreat. Now he is regarded as the third in command of the branch of Bao Zhai Tong Yezhou. In order to observe the aftereffects, if you can't make any more achievements, you will have to be settled by the Patriarch Hall. It's not that the Lu family of Ai Aizhou is cruel and heartless in making money, but that Lu family has always liked to completely dominate a business, and outsiders can only assist from the side, unable to intervene in the operation of key financial lines. In the baggage house there are a lot of trades, rumors and bragging which is useless. According to the rules of the Ancestor Hall, if anyone takes a fancy to a certain business, half of the money must be paid out of his own pocket. If you lose money, whether you smash the pot or sell iron or borrow money from someone, you have to make up the money obediently. If you don't have enough money you have to set up a note and write an IOU. Anyway, you have to make up the hole in the baggage first. It is definitely not just taking the money, spending lavishly or squandering one's own pockets. Moreover, there will be a special accountant at the Patriarch Hall. His identity is a bit similar to that of a battlefield supervising army. It is more difficult to get around this person and to manipulate the accounts than to climb to the sky. Wu Shou has an uncle who has been paying off debts for Bao Zhai for 700 years. Back then, when Shishu was the most beautiful in Wuxia, Zhu Dongtian once borrowed a large sum of money with Shishu. Just by eating interest every year, you can lie down and enjoy your blessings. What a rich country is wealth. Enemy continent. The result is that the heart is too fat and gets involved in the internal affairs of the upper and lower sections. Cui Dongshan glanced at Wu Shou's subtle changes in expression. He is good at making money and he only knows how to make money. It seems that the scar is healed and he forgot to hurt. Could it be that Zhangji came to King Shandu for fishing using Wu Shou as bait? It's like a big fish that is hard to catch and easy to get out of the hook. But for an old fox like Zhangji, once a big fish out of the water with a rod, you can roughly infer his husband's temperament. He caught the hermit, Qin Pingon, and the two emerging sects of Luopa Mountain and Qingping Jianzong. In short, Zhangji rushed to deliberately decouple the big fish, only to make long-term plans for the entire Baozhai. Cui Dongshan was more annoyed by this, so he was too lazy to turn around and asked directly, Zhangji, why are you such a shrewd person here to deliberately bring a Wu Shou here to find it uninteresting? Zhangji smiled and said, it's still not as smart as Sect Master Cui and your husband. How do you say this? Speak carefully, don't follow in the footsteps of old ancestor Wu. Why Sect Master Cui knowingly asked. Zhangji, I have the ability and confidence to pretend to be stupid, but you are really stupid to pretend to be stupid with me. One word of advice, I am now the master of Qingping Sword Sect, and I can follow my husband in the same way. Issued the second order to chase off guests. I can't control your Baozhai's business in the south of Tonggishao. There is Yuguazong's site. I am not familiar with the current Lord Wei Ying, and I became the old Lord of Jiangyu with Yuguazong. It's not too familiar, but the business in the north will not go smoothly from now on. The Baozhai in Beipingzu was expelled from the country by the embroidered tiger Cui Huang, and his fate was similar to Lu Taozi's Xishan Jianin. They all fell apart without joy and thus forged Liangzi. Cui Yang absolutely does not allow any outside forces to have the slightest disagreement in the upcoming battle, pulling back legs and doing their own things. This is because before the war started, Baozhai smelled a crisis, but the Baozhai branch of Haoran Jiuzhou, only Wu Shou's Beipingzu behaved too much. Qin Pingon didn't need to bother about the twists and turns, so the so-called removal order on the table by Qin Pingon had already made it clear. Now the battle between the Haoran world and the wild world is only half fought. Don't think about taking advantage of it. Now that you have the ability to avoid harm, stop thinking about profiting, at least don't think about Aquarius. And Zhangji deliberately brought Wu Shou to visit here. Isn't it a temptation? For this young hidden official, Zhangji has 3 things to verify. First, will he serve as a master of the country and inherit the cultural heritage of the brothers Xiuhu? Tuiyang. Secondly, did Qingping Jianzong in Tonggishao have the ambition to be the leader of an immortal mansion on one continent? Thirdly, Qin Pingan's disposition is similar to embroidered tigers, and how different is it from Tuiyang? Zhangji and Baozhai are only good-looking. How much capital Baozhai invested here? You have to read the 3 answers before you can get a rough conclusion. Because the 2 ferry crossings that Baozhai really cares about are not the Aquarius Island where the southern countries have recovered so quickly, but the 2 places of Tongya Island and Fuyao Island. There are Xinjia ferry crossings in Jiuzhou in the world, either open or dark. Almost all of them are bought and sold. Cui Dongshan suddenly smiled and said, Wu Shou's Berdenzhai in Aquarius, he didn't do anything obscure, right? Zhangji said indifferently, if there is, wherever I need me Xianxia to remind Wu Shou to find a place by himself, I have already helped him choose it. Berdenzhai was created by me. I have worked hard and everything is fine. I like to stare personally, so Bao Qiuzhai is always a one-word man. For example, if I were the master of the Middle-earth Delonqiu and dealt with Xianxia's evil obstacles, there was no need to go through the Patriarch Hall to discuss matters and decide in one word. All you need to do is send the Dragon Beard Immortal, and when he arrives at this Tonggishao Xianxiu, he will be executed on the spot. People who do business have their own way of making money. Since ancient times they are only businessmen. In the final analysis they are still human beings. They still have to talk about the bottom line. I want to buy and sell for a long time, follow general trend. But if you do a lot of bad things, people won't accept it. Upon hearing this, Cui Dongshan nodded. Xianxia said, back then after driving away Baozhai, Cui Guosher immediately introduced Mr. Fan and the merchants to Beipingzu, just like clearing the market for the latter. After suffering from this boring loss, we Baozhai accepted the plant and we took the blame and there was no complaint. Then as Mr. Qin said regarding the reopening of Aquarius Island, when the world will be peaceful, Baozhai and Luo Pashan come to discuss it carefully. As for Tongyi's how, what is Baozhai's sincerity and what is the background? I think we can use the profane cooperation as a starting point. What is Cui Zong's idea? Wu Shou knew that his ancestor and the white-clothed boy were communicating with each other. The fat man regretted his intestines. He had known that little girl for a bowl of hot tea. It would be better than sitting now. For some reason, the young hermit walked out of the house again, with the little black girl carrying the stove beside him. Now Wu Shou saw this little water monster in the cave mansion realm, the dignified Yuanying realm, but if you don't feel stumbling, Wu Shou can't wait to kneel and kowtow to grandma. Zhou Mili added tea to everyone again. It was Wu Shou's turn, and he hurriedly bowed his head to thank the little girl again and again, almost tearing in his eyes. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, the last fat man also walked through Xindu Mountain, so you are not as lucky as you. Qin Pingon sat on the bench and Zhou Mili sat aside. From his sleeve he took out a folded Yuzhu folding fan. Qin Pingon placed the bamboo fan on the table lightly and smiled. I was in the house just now, and I remembered that Mr. Zhang personally opened Baozhai at Yuanyangzu. Zhai's name is Heqi, and he opened the door to do business. It really means to make money with harmony. A few friends and I coincided with the meeting. I visited Heqi Zhai carefully. It was an eye-opener. It seemed that I owed Mr. Zhang a favor and 2 letters. The world 1 yard goes to 1 yard, business is not righteous and righteous. It turned out that in Hekazai before, Qin Pingon caught this precious folding fan with a glance, but he didn't carry much money from the gods at the time and he was ashamed of his pocket. He never thought that there would be a beauty of Fulu in the Zhai and he offered to offer it. Take away the fan and in the future at any ferry crossing, you just need to make up the money. Afterwards, Baozhai will definitely destroy the IOU notes. After that, Li Huai took a look at the mountain ferry, that looked like a bonsai, and an old willow tree elder inhabited it, and Baozhai offered 10 grains of rain money, and Qin Pingon signed another note in place of Li Huai. Cui Dongshan stretched out his hand and took the folding fan and opened it with a snap. The fan was excerpted from Su Zis prayer for rain. The fan itself can be regarded as a great treasure of water magic. The magic treasure cannot be removed. The sword repairer with better aptitude, good luck. Choose a time when thunder and lightning will increase the rain. After bathing and changing clothes, turn on the fan and watch. While watching the weather in cursive script, by chance, maybe he could still learn a little bit of sword spirit from Liuzhou, the sword fairy of the past. Cui Dongshan wondered, Sir, Baozhai was opened in Parrot Island at that time, and it seems that he is not in Yuanyangzu. Qin Pingon said suddenly, is that so? That's what I remember. Wu Shou is about to collapse. Your hermit, are you so sincere when you speak? Zhangji took out 2 notes from his sleeves. They were signed by Luopashen Qin Pingon. One of the IOUs was 50 rain money from the folding fan, and 10 rain money from the Xianshan bonsai. Cui Dongshan glanced at it and quickly took out 60 grains of rain money, intending to share the worries for his husband, pay off the debt and retrieve the IOU. Don't destroy it, you have to keep it. In the future Cui Dongshan can give the Taoist Nin a look. 10 grains of rain money? Be stupid, the old willow tree spirit, but he talked to the real person of Chunyang Lu Yen the word Xianshan on the fist-sized rock, but Lu Yen wrote with sword energy. These cliff carvings are authentic. However, Zhangji held down the 2 IOUs with his fingers and smiled. Mr. Qin gave out 60 Guyuqian today. Even if the debt is settled according to the rules, these 2 IOUs need to be destroyed immediately, but I want to follow Mr. Qin has a discussion. We have a burden. Can we spend 70 grains of rain, which is equivalent to buying these 2 IOUs with Mr. Qin? Zhou Mili was stunned. The words of the good man mountain master to Luopashen Qin Pingon. 10 words. It is equivalent to earning 10 grains of rain money. Is it so valuable? Qin Pingon smiled and shook his head. It's too unruly. It's still more refreshing to have money and money. Zhangji smiled and said, it is not an exception specifically for Mr. Qin. In the history of Baozhai, There are many precedents for this kind of thing. Cui Dongshan sneered and said, 70 grains of rain money send a beggar 700. Millet grains are shocked again. Dubai Goose no, the lovely and respectable big brother is doing business with people. Has he always liked such a lion to open his mouth? Are you afraid of being beaten? I never thought that Mr. Zhang immediately took out a big bag from his sleeve, put it on the table and quickly retracted the 2 IOUs into his sleeve. Then it's settled, it's the money and the money. The original Luopashan Chen Pingon will only become more and more valuable in the future. Of course, it is difficult to be worth 10 words and you need to use 700 grains of rain money to buy it. That is too exaggerated. Dozens of grains of rain money is a more appropriate and safe price. In the future, Hekazai, if you encounter a wealthy man who is hard to buy a good mountain, you will not worry about selling it. But these are 2 IOUs with extraordinary significance. In particular, Qin Pingon made up the written records before participating in the discussions of the Chinese-Turkish Confucian Temple. After seeing this scene, Wuxia admired in his heart. He is worthy of being the ancestor of his own baggage fast. Cui Dongshan carefully dragged the big bag of Guyuqian, and it was not an officialdom to lose it. Otherwise, would it be regarded as some kind of elegant bribery? Alas, luck can't stop it, and there are 700 grains of rain falling from the sky. The owner of the accountant is so happy to plant autumn. With a smile on his face, Qin Pingon looked at Cui Dongshan, who was a thief. Cui Dongshan had to change the route midway, pushed the money bag to the millet grains and said earnestly, Guardian right, this money belongs to the public, remember to keep it and return it to the Wei accountant on the Fengyuan ferry. Don't be greedy for ink. Millet grains held the purse in both hands and called back to him, hey, it's really heavy. The little girl straightened her waist and said, take Ling. She frowned suddenly and glanced at Mr. Zhang, who was generous in his hands. The little girl scratched her face, but she didn't say anything. She's poor now. She has accumulated bits and pieces of her private money, and she can't make up a single Guyuqian. If there is a mistake and there is a shortage of Guyuqian in her purse, wouldn't it be worth noting that she sold herself? Get debts. Zhang Ji smiled and said, it's just 700, no more no less, just don't worry, Master Zhou Xian. Seen through the thoughts of the millet grains with a shy smile, Master Zhang Daxian is really considerate and good. Qin Pingon touched the head of the millet grain and smiled at Zhang Ji. Zhang Jixiao asked, Mr. Qin, Sect Master Cui, can you take the liberty to ask, what is the approximate amount of the first immortal money in Tong Yes's excavation of this blasphemy? Cui Dongshan tuted, it's really not a general presumption. They are all old foxes. If Zhang Ji knows the amount of this Guyuqian, the scale of the future data can actually be roughly estimated. One accidentally, with the careful calculation of Baozhai, you can even completely bypass the forces of Qingping Jianzong, arrange early, carefully study a picture of the geomancy of Tonggis Hao and the landscape situation of various countries, and then enter the sea in 2 directions. With Mui and Peijiang as the starting point for the deduction, Baozhai has certainty to figure out the trend of a large river, and then secretly with those dynasty emperors and vassal monarchs who have long been destitute, by those who are temporarily worthless at a low price. For hilltops and sites, land leases can be handed over quickly, and you can wait for Dadu to find your door. Wealth will be rolling in and we will be able to secure harvests due to droughts and floods. So Qin Pingon shook his head bluntly and said, excuse me. Zhang Ji said, Baekizai really hopes to dig through the blasphemy, seeking both profit and fame, and seeking more fame you can earn less money or even no money at all. We will not and should not avoid King Pingjian. Zong Zili Stove make the same mistake again, the gain is not worth the loss. Cui Dongshan folded his arms around his chest. Your Baozhai's reputation in the Haoran world is really average. It's a few dozen blocks away. Just imagine that after 100 years or 1,000 years, every time you pass by Tonggis Hao, the children of Baozhai, regardless of whether you are working hard to make money or wandering around the mountains and rivers, you only need to look at the place that rushes to the sea and never returns. Whether you are crossing the river by boat, standing on the shore, or on the Xianxia ferry in the sky, overlooking the winding water dragon that traverses Tonggis Hao, you can have a clear conscience and laugh with friends. To learn from the old ancestor Wu to brag like this big blasphemy, we have a burden. Qin Pingon smiled and said, people pass by and leave their names, but geese pass by. Regardless of one mind, those who only seek to prove the immortality of the Tao, then those with high swordsmanship, hard-fisted, powerful, and rich in their pockets must leave something to the world. Wuxiu sighed. You two sang the double song here. As a result, Wuxiu saw the young man in white with a mole on his eyebrows and stared at himself. Wuxiu's body was tight for an instant and his heart was constantly complaining. Fortunately, Xianxia helped solve the siege, continued the previous topic and nodded with a smile. This kind of business that has been used for the generations of the common people really cannot simply pursue profit on the book. Xianxia then laughed and said, It's true that I only brought Wuxiu here to run into the wall this time because the Taoist couple who is in charge of Tongyi's Hao Baozhai, plus the ancestor of Baozhai who was born is in charge of the account books. In the account room, the three of them all have too much admiration for the hermit. They are different from Wuxiu who only recognizes money, so that I am worried that they will come here and will not bargain at all. It's too much to treat business as a business. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Even if you have heard such kind words in the business field, you don't need to take it seriously. Xianxia reiterated the old story, then count us as one? 6,000 Guyu Qian Tongyi's Hao Bureau's I accounted for half, and I will pay out of my own pocket to make up the other half. Cui Dongshan asked, Who asks whom? Xianxia smiled and said, Of course I beg you. Cui Dongshan turned his head and looked at Mr. the general direction. Of course he had to make up his mind. Qin Pingon nodded and said, Mr. Zhang can make a request. Dongshan, before that you can tell Mr. Zhang the general situation. Cui Dongshan only then began to show some sincerity, and explained to Bao Zhai the funding situation of the first immortal money. Qingping Jinzong gave 3,000 Guyu money, Yu Guizong gave 5,000, De Quan Yao family Hui and Qingping Jinzong and Yu Guizong each borrowed 1,000 Guyu Qian, while Ai Aizhou Lu clan and Xuanmi dynasty Yu clan each took out 10,000 and 2,000 Guyu Qian. It will soon be accounted for, and this is only the initial investment in the first phase. Want to excavate a brand new dadu? The project is vast, involving all aspects, only to restore the country along the dadu or to establish a new orthodox new and old courts. Take this opportunity to use work instead of relief victims from the homeland, the need at every turn employing tens or millions of laborers. Countries can take the opportunity to clean up old mountains and rivers, and they can also gather refugees from all over the country. The imperial court and local governments can centrally manage them. I was hungry for thousands of miles in the first year and the bones became wild. In addition, the Lu family of Iazhao promised to provide 300 rune boats of different sizes to help transport the people to the brand new Dadu riverbed. It is just the spiritual energy consumption of these Liu's private ferry boats, and a series of manpower dispatches in charge of the ferry master of the rune boat. The money spent by the gods on the ferry going to and from all over the place is all taken care of by the countries along the way. Responsible. After Xianxia heard it, he knew it in his heart. As soon as he wanted to speak, Cui Dongshan emphasized his tone and reminded him, Xianxia, you have to know that Lu and you have given out so much money, and they have been operating improperly and losing money. If you lose money, you will lose money. There is no complaint, but there is no evidence of any debt. Even if you can make money in the future, no matter how profitable in the future, Lu Jubao and Yu Panshui have already promised. They are all signed contracts. The two families earn at most 10% of the principal, and if they make this immortal money, Tong Yes's blasphemy means that they have no relationship with them. As for the specific benefits of Dadu, it must be Xianxia and Bao Zhai who are most interested in where they came from, but I'm sorry you have to see the real money before you are qualified to know about it, otherwise you will guess. Xianxia said, We can also learn from Lu Kaishan and Yu Panshui in terms of money, and earn up to 10% of the principal of the account. All the Xinjia ferry crossings along the way, regardless of whether the ferry is old or new, will be built with baggage houses. The imperial courts of various countries do not collect land rent. They are all bought by baggage houses with money. They are more refreshing, no wrangling and waste of energy. Unless the local dynasty changes and the country changes. The surname, when the time comes, it will be another attribution, otherwise the sale will be a price. As for the specific price of each new baggage at the ferry, I will let Wuxiu and the others talk about it, and it will also be considered as an additional benefit to the courts of various countries. The monarch and the yamen of the household department felt stretched when they talked about money, and easily delayed the progress of the Dadu excavation project. Cui Dongshan couldn't help laughing. Good fellow, this is an obvious land grab. Zhang Ji explained with a smile. The popularity of Xianxia ferry is still very different whether there is a baggage fast or not. Wuxia finally felt that he had the opportunity to make up for it. He just wanted to take the initiative and wanted to sell his personal affection. He said that in King Shandu I can take the lead in paying for it. The manpower, material resources and financial resources are all provided by our Tongyi's Hao Baozhai. Bao Yuan, a variety of buildings that Xianxia ferry should have. Zhang Ji immediately turned his head, put his fingers together and gently tapped the tabletop. Wuxia, honestly, drink your tea. The rare anger patriarch is so angry that I really want to slap you to death. If it is selfish, why should Qingping Jianzong consume so much incense from the mountain, as the initiator of the blasphemy, fill this bottomless hole like a hole? If you Wuxia open the mouth to give the suggestion in your heart, it is tantamount to telling the mountains and rivers, no, you Qingping Jianzong in fact are selfish. Cui Dongshan grinned and said, Mr. Zhang shouldn't demand that all his subordinates have a broad vision and a big picture like you. Otherwise Bao Zhai would have replaced the merchants long ago, and become an ancestor by himself or be blinded by Mr. Fan. Yes, please go to be the third ancestor of the merchant. Zhang Ji helplessly smiled. Such words can't be spread. Indeed, as Cui Dongshan said in a school, it is impossible to be alone in acting styles and methods of making money. Qin Pingon stood up, smiled and said goodbye with a fist. Since the direction is agreed, the next step is to grind the details, so let Dongshan talk to Mr. Zhang in detail. You should be noisy or scolded. You don't have to be polite. It will be better. Zhang Ji stood up and held his fists to send off. Qin Pingon smiled at that Wuxia. Today we two really knew each other. Don't brag about drinking together with outsiders in the future. It's true to drink tea together anyway. Wuxia's little chicken pecked at the rice, vowing to promise. No, the teachings of the hermit, remember it in my heart. Then Qin Pingon left King Shandu with the millet grains and Mi De Xianxian and returned to Mishua Peak on foot. Zhou Mili asked, Good man Mountain Lord, do you go home together? Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, it's half the way. When the Fengyuan ferry arrives at Old Dragon City, I will accompany Senior Song to disembark for a while, and then I will rush back to Luopa Mountain alone. I will definitely arrive home earlier than you. Zhou Mili nodded, it's good to dare to love. It's rare that a good mountain owner waits for him to return home, instead of waiting for a good mountain owner to return home. Happy thief is happy, happier than receiving red envelopes during the new year. Miyu glanced back at Wuxia and asked, Hidden officer, really forget it? Qin Pingon rubbed the head of the millet grains. Would you like to beat him to get out of his breath? Zhou Mili grinned and said, Don't be angry, you want to be atmospheric when you walk in the rivers and lakes. Qin Pingon put his hands away and nodded with a smile. Mi Dajian, did you hear me? Learn something. Miyu wanted to rub the head of the millet grains, but the little girl stretched out her palm and dragged Miye's wrist and said anxiously, Yumi mania, it's really true to touch her head again. Don't grow up. Miyu hesitated for a moment and asked in his heart, My Lord Hermit, haven't you always admired that Pao Zhai patriarch? Don't take this opportunity to talk a few more words? Qin Pingon smiled and said, Admiration is true, but as Mr. Zhang himself said, it's easy to lose your sense of measure when you work in partnership with people you admire. Furthermore, I look at the broad-hearted and fat old ancestor Wu. It's annoying. Over the table, Cui Dongshan began to complain to Zhang directly. It turned out that in order to excavate the Dadu incident, a temporary existence similar to the Patriarch's Hall was formed. His own Qingping Jianzong will send Zhongqiu and Miyu here. Cannot be said that this matter is ignored. Yu Guizong came forward by Wang Ji and the Daquan dynasty. Li Xiling, the official book of the Ministry of Etiquette, plus a household servant who left the capital specifically for this matter, can be regarded as a rare opportunity for officialdom to be gilded. Xue Huai of Yunkatang in Pushan and Taiping Mountain are enshrined in Negative Mountain. The Lu family of Ia's Hao and the Yu family of Zhongtu will also send one person to Tongyi's Hao. It is most likely the Lu Yuzhou who has bad intentions and then was sacked, and the Yu Yifu who is old friends with the hermit and Peiqian. In addition, the countries along the Dadu in the future can also arrange their own personnel to participate in the discussions, and they can have a place in this pastor hall. Just talking about Qingping Jianzong, in addition to the talisman who will use Cui Dongshan, there are also puppets including Jinshi, Moyuer and Taya Shangeng. Zhong Qiu served as the accountant, the chief worshipper Miyu personally led the team, and Tao Ran Tao De Jiangxian was responsible for defending the road. Zhou Xian returned. Coupled with the old Qiu Du, he even dug Yuan Ing realm Shuijiao Hongxiao and Yunzi from the Luopa mountain. Of course, there are also 3 big figures who are most able to move mountains and seas as easy as turning palms. Cui Dongshan has not revealed the secrets of Bao Zhai for the time being. The king of Donghai Si Wangzhu. The old throne Big Demon Yangji and the Baron Tao Pavilion with half of the mountain refining art, today's Nin Taoist. Everything is ready. The person who added tea was replaced by girl vinegar. Cui Dongshan drank the last bowl of tea and sighed. Zhangji, I really didn't say you. My husband originally admired you very much. You said you were trying something. Now it's okay. Almost turned your face thanks to my painstaking remedial work. Today's meeting was considered a good start and a good end and a good start. Zhangji laughed at himself. It is better to be famous than to meet. Cui Dongshan sighed. Anything in the world through the ages, it is always accidental but not accidental. Born from worry, accomplishing business, losing pride, gaining truth, returning to indifference, staying in memory, dying in forgetting, living in. Zhangji, I'm out of words. You come to make up. Zhangji shook his head and said in his own heart, Zhang is a talented person who is not very knowledgeable. It is better to embroider a tiger with insight, and of course he dare not continue. Cui Dongshan wondered, have you seen me? Zhangji was even more puzzled. What kind of problem is this? In Aquarius back then, didn't you sign up for your own registration number and then you asked me to get out? Cui Dongshan nodded. That's one of the essence of my husband's learning, so I accidentally remembered something wrong. Until Zhangji left Qingshandu that day, Peng Chao, a wooden guest from Luoyang on Mishua Peak, did not show up, reminiscing with this junior in the mountain. Fengyuan ferry began to sail south. Qin Pingon and Xiao Mili both boarded the ship, Miyu accompanied. After this trip, Mi de Jianxian needs to devote himself to the excavation of Dadu. In the study of Mi Xiefeng's mansion, after saying goodbye to her husband and Xiao Mili, Cui Dongshan returned to this place and sat on a chair with Cui Wei standing beside him. On the wall, there is a piece of rice paper hung in the ancient seal script Qingping Jianzong, and below it is written some famous wooden plaques and marginal notes, which are divided into different realms. At the highest point, write the 3 characters 14 realms, and leave it blank. Ascension realm is still temporarily vacant. In the column of immortals there is Cui Dongshan half-sword repair. Mu Jianxiu. Below Yupu there are Tai Wu Ban Jianxiu and there is still a line of small letters on rice paper. At most 10 years, strive for 5 years. Yuaning Cui Wei Jianxiu. On the right of Sui Jianxiu. Chu Duolqiu. Jindan with Chao Sunny half-sword repair. Tao Ran Jianxiu. A side note, he needs to make up his sword. Wu Hook ghost repair. Xiao Menying ghost repair. Cui Dongshan asked, Cui Wei, do you know the market for the Haoran sect? Cui Wei nodded and said, clear. Cui Dongshan said, so you as the master of our Qingping sword sect, must be in the Yupu realm earlier than Sui right side. It is her business that Sui right side does not fight for this, and she has the right not to be anxious to break Yuaning. Environmental bottleneck, but this is not a reason for you not to hurry up. Cui Wei said, Mr. Xiaoma taught in the Luobaotan dojo. I have consulted on kendo many times and he suddenly became clear and benefited a lot. Within 3 years Yupu will definitely be there. Cui Dongshan hummed, you said it yourself. After 3 years nothing will happen, so don't blame me for turning my face. In the vast world, whether it is qualified to be called the top sect, there is a threshold, which is whether there is a great monk in the Ascension realm at the moment. First-class sects nowadays, whether there are immortals, are the golden signs. Among them, the ancestors who have been in the Ascended realm are naturally superior, and the sect has 2 or more immortals and looks down on only 1. The second-rate sect may not have the fairyland for the time being, but it has a number of jade princesses, or that there is a jade princess master who has been in seclusion for many years and is expected to be an immortal. Among the lowest third-rate sects among the immortal palaces of the Zongzita sect, there is only 1 Yupu realm, and there are even some sect fairy palaces that are not connected with each other. There is no ancestor or suzerain of the Yupu realm monk. Of course, the zone prefix is the zone prefix. Not everyone can take it seriously in the eyes of ordinary genealogical monks in Yamazawa Yishio. It is still an unattainable behemoth. Cui Dongshan smiled and asked, Cui de Zanglu, do you know why I chose this place as the foundation of Qingping sword sect? Cui Wei shook his head and said, I don't know. Cui Dongshan leaned on the chair and twisted his wrists. One of them is to find a hidden expert. He doesn't like fighting the least in his life, but he can do it very well. Back then he found Fei Fei's retreat route. But this one Xianxia, whose whereabouts are uncertain, is still proficient in sword making, but he is not from the Haoran family but from the Qingming world. Since he is a friend of the enemy, he is a friend. Cui Wei asked, Name, Dao number? What is the realm? Cui Dongshan said, You don't need to know this, you just need to know that there is such a number one person. Sooner or later you can meet Mrs. Su, the leading swordsman in the Qingming world. He is not a woman but Mrs. Su. The clouds and water are long and I share sorrows with the monarch. Wuxia is a real human surname Su, only dreams of idlers but not dreams of monarchs, and all the way to Yuhang. I say that I am addicted to alcohol and I am innocent and I am innocent. This person who can be called a cultivator from outside the world doesn't matter if he appears or not for the time being. Anyway, he needs to borrow the east wind from my Xindu mountain. Sword of Coming Chapter 973. A wind kite ferry traveling south to Tonggishao. Stopped midway at Tayedu outside Mirage City. Song Yushao is still dressed in a blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes. Alone, boarding the ferry. According to the agreement with the Daquan dynasty, the ferry will help transport a batch of materials to Yuguazong by Chengdu and Kishandu, which is located on the southernmost side of Izhou. Sold in 2 places. I didn't see Han Guanghu and Jian Ming accompanied. Mi looked playful. Zhou Mili was hung on the railing and kicked lightly. It was a pity. I still couldn't see that Pei Qian said that he looked as beautiful as a flower when he was a child. Like His Majesty the Emperor Daquan. At that time Pei Qian was quite eloquent, saying that Shui Ling's sister named Yao Jinji. She looked at Master's eyes. Haha, there are so many dramas. When all the goods were loaded on the ferry, Feng Yuan continued to travel south. Qin Pingon accompanied Senior Song for a few drinks. Song Yushao said that Lord Fu Yin had been so busy recently that he couldn't get out of it, because Master Han was willing to take the initiative to serve as Dequangguo. The matter of the division can be described as shaking up and down the whole country. Drinking wine, Song Yushao talked about some things about the Daquan temple in Mirage City, and said, excavating a big blasphemy is too big and needs to be justified. There is something that is destined to be inevitable. How do you think about it? Talk to those colleges? It is necessary to obtain permission from the Central Tu Confucian Temple and the views of the 3 academies located in Tonggishao. It is necessary to first connect with the academies and ventilate them so as not to branch out. Qin Pingon nodded and said, on the side of the Confucian Temple my husband will help to finalize it. As for the 3 academies on the side of Tonggishao, Tianmu, Dafu and Wuxia, I will take the wind kite ferry this time and return to the north. I will leave the ferry and visit the past one by one. The Dafu Academy in the central part has the best grasp. I and Shan Chongqing Longzhou are old acquaintances. The Lord Zhou of Wuxia Academy is not a big problem. I am still friends with the deputy mountain chief Wang Zai. Wang Zai can definitely help mediate. The biggest problem is the Tianmu Academy. Fan Shan grew up in the Subsage line and he is rigorous in his studies and prudent, which means he is relatively conservative in his work. The gentleman of the mountain leader Wen Yu, this man is extremely talented and more courageous. Not long after he arrived in the academy he directly put on a posture. Wen Yu, he is in charge anyway. Song Yushao laughed and said, even I have heard of this gentleman. One can imagine how famous Wen Yu is. Wen Yu is not a native of Tonggishao. He once had full power in the battle in the South Pasuazhou battlefield. As a result, Wen Yu was killed alive and killed a fairy clan who was in charge of a certain military tent. Qin Pingon said seriously, no matter how famous Wen Shanchong is, he is still slightly inferior to me. Originally he left with Xiaomo. If he hadn't gone back to his hometown this time, Qin Pingon planned to hand over these matters related to the academy to the teacher. Scholars chat well with scholars. Song Yuxiao Renjun couldn't help but said, "What's the point of bragging with me? Your kid has the ability to meet each other and talk to the Long Wen Shanchong face to face." Qin Pingon raised the wine bowl and said with a smile, "I'm not lacking in roots. I'm so stupid. It's too old-fashioned to meet and slap people in the face." Izhou Santriyuan Dahu Tianmu Wuxi. Tongji's Hao is one continent north and south, the two old largest sects, now the thriving Yuguazong and the half-dead Tongjizong. If you add a Qingping Jianzong, it is estimated that for the three colleges, it is just one. That's right. Since it is said that everything is difficult at the beginning, the Wuxi Academy in the south, with Zhou Mi and Wang Zayasheng and a pair of mountain leaders, must have a good beginning. Song Yuxiao hesitated to speak and then laughed to himself and started drinking. There is a lot of gossip in that Mirage City. According to some gossips that have noses and eyes, it seems that even Master Han's role as a national teacher has become a means to cover up. There is also the Taoye Ferry in the Jingqing city of Beijing. Most of the words are conclusive. It must be the result of someone's strong recommendation. Otherwise, how could Master Han come to Mirage City? From this point of view, the young hidden official had to miss our Daquan dynasty so much that he was willing to make such a roundabout contribution to the Yao family. Qin Pingon wondered, "Senior Song, what anecdotes have been heard in Mirage City before, and what miracles have been seen? So happy?" Song Yu said with a smile, "It's not a strange anecdote. It's just some hearsay about the love of the children, and I don't know the true or false. Anyway, I'm in the Yao mansion, a martial artist who is not a golden figure. Receiving a lot of courtesy." Qin Pingon smiled bitterly, "Drink and drink. In the Daquan dynasty, the water temple buried by the river, the incense flourishes, and the people who worship incense are in an endless stream. In front of the monument for praying for rain, stood a woman in a Jingchai sarong with a graceful appearance, with a fan of a PU fan around her waist. At the woman's feet, there was a girl-like hippo girl squatting, and she didn't think the inscription was anything to look at. This pair of out-of-town tourists who have just become mentors and apprentices traveled across the continents of Tongji's Hao and Guangzhou from Zhong to Shenzhou. Now Chaoqiu is the official disciple of Yangji. Uphold the current identity of the landscape genealogy. Pseudonym Jingxing road name High Mountain, is the famous guest of the Xiangtou Mountain Shrine in a small country in Zhong to Shenzhou. As for the high-ranking robe, it was put on the disciple Guangzhou and used to temper his golden body. This is a once-in-lifetime practice. One thing is destined to be like a broken bamboo. After all, this is one of the top 10 robes in the world. Yangji asked softly, "Do you still feel staggered when you wear it on your body?" The girl looked up and smiled. "Master, it's much better." He stopped and nodded and said, "When you feel that you don't feel sluggish while walking, you're done." Guangzhou joked, "Master, I will pay you back then, don't refuse it." Yangji smiled and said, "I didn't even think about sending you off, don't be affectionate." Guangzhou laughed and said, "I thought Master would give me away." I declined 1 or 2 or 3 times and finally returned to Master. The friendship between Master and apprentice has grown stronger. Yangji smiled and picked up a living treasure to be a disciple. This long journey is not boring. Guangzhou squatted on the ground, pulled the collar of his robe and asked, "Master, this piece of clothing is always valuable, right?" The robes of the Taoist monks, worn on the gods of mountains and rivers, are actually equivalent to tempering the golden body. It is indeed unheard of. However, Guangzhou feels that he has really little insight. Or the sedan chair. He stopped and nodded. It's really rare to see a robe of the same rank. In the ancient years 10,000 years ago, the big demon who had always appeared as a young man in the past only occupied 2 pieces. After he and Bai Jing and other big demon disappeared, these 2 mountain treasures were scattered in 2 sects in the wild world. Inwardly, Yangji is not to be greedy. I really dare not act rashly. In addition, the feather garment that Taoist ancestor gave to Yu Dou, and that of Yao Qing, the elegant minister of Qingshan dynasty, also has a similar rank. Yuzhou Daifishan Huayang Palace and Gaogu with the name Jue has another one. For the Haoran world, Fu Lu Yuxuan's purple energy, coupled with the Dao vein of Zhao Tianlai, the contemporary celestial master of Long Hushan. So the saying the world's first-class robes, Daomen account for half. Yangji planned to take a trip to the Daquan Buried River, and then to the Linhe River and the Peijiang River near Pushan. the buried river and the Peijiang River meandering into the sea, but like the backbone of an air trainer, limited by nature. If there is no human intervention, there is absolutely no qualification. One only has the qualifications of the middle 5 realms. The cultivating embryo of Taoism wants to be among the 5 realms, and can only make up for it with a lot of good luck. Yang Ji suddenly turned his head and looked to the north side of the sky. In a sea of clouds, there was probably a ferry slowly falling down near Taeyedu in Mirage City. Yang Ji immediately retracted her gaze. She didn't dare to take a few more casual glances, because she was worried that there was a sword repairer on the ferry that hadn't dealt with it 10,000 years ago, and her enemies were extremely jealous when they met. With a faint sigh, he turned his mouth back and twitched. In fact, the real confidant problem is that Bai Jing's enmity with the former sword repairman is just a dispute of spirit, and it does not involve a fight that has to kill you. But that Bai Jing has coveted some of his own inheritance for many years. In fact, in the early years, the reason why Yang Ji and his real name Zhu Wei, the ancestor who moved to the mountain, broke eyes and eyes, was a kind of forced alliance in order to seek self. Bao, I just want not to be disturbed by Bai Jing Wenjian for a while. Bai Jing was definitely not dead, and no one would die this extremely difficult and lingering fellow. In this case, being in the vast world far away from the wild, is it a blessing in misfortune? In the Bio Palace near the buried river temple, the goddess of water buried in the river is personally entertaining guests. The other party is a family of her own, commonly known as the East Sea Woman. Anyway, they are all the goddess of water. Although the 2 temples are far apart, one east and the other west, the other party took the initiative to visit. As a guest, Lu Rou is still very enthusiastic. The water from the source of Peijiang River named Ko Xietsu has asked for something. As the water of Peijiang and the water descendant of the genus of Jiaolong, Ko Xiangxiu was born as a water of Peijiang. Of course, it is impossible to walk in his own Peijiang, so Huang Yiyun, who was previously a neighbor and friend, helped Ko Xietsu and Daquan. The female emperor matched the bridge, and Yao Xinji asked about the buried river Bio Palace. In fact, Lu Rou had already given a reply at that time. It was very simple, just 2 words: welcome. Even if it is finalized that Ko Xing Canal will bury the river and take the water. The only drawback is that Ko Xuanxiu seems to have heard about the hospitality of Bio Palace. She said she was not hungry when she met, and she was not good at drinking, just drinking tea. Today Ko Xingxiu made tea by himself, which is Yunwu tea produced in Peijiang. Lu Rou drank the tea and said politely, "This tea is delicious, delicious. It's just that the taste is lighter and it's no different from drinking water." Lu Rou was thinking about how to make a suitable opening remark so that he could ask Ko Xuanxiu about something that he had been curious about for a long time. Hearsays, catching up on the wind and catching the wind, would rather give the answer in person. The 2 places at the source and the end of the Peijiang River were dedicated to the Donghai women and Qinghong Lord, but they belonged to the Yin temple that was not approved by the local court. Coupled with the avenue of Ko Zuankus origin, you can improve your cultivation level by walking through the water. And the most interesting thing is that there are 2 statues of gods in the temples of the water gods in the 2 places. It's just this kind of inside story that involves privacy. Lu Rou is very curious, and it's not easy to ask face to face in the middle of winter. Therefore, Lu Rou held back for a long time before she asked a question of her own decency. The Qing Hongjun, whose temple is located at the estuary of Peijiang, didn't he come together? Ko Xuanxiu shook his head and smiled. No. It is not easy for the water to leave the jurisdiction, not to mention that Qing Hongjun is not an orthodox water god. Lu Rou let out a cry. According to the records and exaggeration of those Zhiguai Yuming novels, she said that the East Sea Woman, who could not return home, was actually from the East Sea Dragon Girl. Lu Rou was the of water. Today I saw Ko Xuanxiu for the first time. I can see that this kind of statement is nonsense. Vegetarian? Lu Rou surreptitiously took out a book, coughed, and put it on the table in a pretended manner. The goddess buried in the river water was very deliberate and finally used the most crappy reason, saying, "Xiaoxiu, the head of the book, it's like telling nonsense and telling stories, right?" Ko Xuanxiu glanced at the title of the book, understood in his heart, and smiled. "It is half true and half false. I have also read this book. The book says I am a dragon girl in a dragon palace in the East Sea. Miss Qianjin often took a personal maid, traveled inland through the Peijiang by boat, and asked the scholars to help copy the scriptures and poems. In fact, it is not a random fabrication because there are indeed such things, but the lady deliberately let I pretend to be her, and then she will pretend to be a maid. Lu Rao's expression was bright, her eyes gleamed, then she really attracted the coveted beauty of a Wuxia mountain monarch, and ordered her subordinate AI to knock Qing Hongjun over the building and block the way. As a result, she missed and collided with you. I went back by force and Jinwu hides the Jiao. At the source of the Peijiang River, I will build a private house for you in the water mansion. Whenever you are homesick, you will cry like rain and flood the Peijiang River. If this is the case, this mountain you can't do things honestly. If it's true, don't worry. I will ask a little master for you when I turn back. This little master is great. If he takes the initiative to uphold justice, you will surely be free. Body. Oh, isn't it so twists and turns? Is it another kind of saying that the fairy teacher on the Tonggishao mountain said? It's your lady who is secretly married to the Qing Hongjun who has long looked at each other in order to escape the marriage, the mountain king. Well, it's the beauty of intending to be an adult and being a month old. So you are just a blindfold. You can be regarded as an elopement for your own lady, avoiding people's eyes? That said, it is indeed lingering song and tear. Ko Xuanxiu looked helpless and undecided. She really didn't want to deceive the of buried river water, so she had to choose some content that didn't hurt. In this story, whether it's with Qing Hongjun or with the kind-hearted man Shanjun, has never been involved in the love of men and women. Lu Rou was greatly disappointed. She put away the book on the table in an anguish and complained softly, "Students are not kind, especially those who write books. There is a way to deceive people." Ko Xian smiled. Lu Rou laughed and said, "If you don't talk too speculatively, there will be less than 1,000 glasses of wine every confidant. We will drink one of them. I will do whatever you want. Ha, it's tea the same." A confluence of land and sea near a buried river. A group of people walked to the shore and appeared, and the leader was the king of Donghai Sea, the true dragon King Zhu. With a group of followers, the 4 Shuifu followers, Li Ba, Huang Man, Gong Yan and Shi Man. They followed the king of water Zhu and took another trip to the darts. It is rare to take a leisurely trip. This time they landed. They were to follow Wang Zhu to a new Xianxia dynasty named Shenlong, to stroll around. The identities of a few of them are not simple. It is really rare to get together and become colleagues. Jade Taoist Huang Man is a ghost repairer in the fairyland. He is good at calling the wind and the rain literally, but he has grievances with Zhang Tiaoxia, the first person in martial arts in the past. Li Ba, the master of the Taoist name, is an old monk from Jinjiazu. He was an irreversible friendship with that Wanyan Laojing. A national teacher whose dynasty has been destroyed, once held the Qingzhang Taoist Academy. His status are a bit similar to that of Luzhou and Beiju. Yang Qingyan, the national teacher of the Zhou Xian department of the Dayuan dynasty. Timan Wufu of the Nine Realms. Born in Luxiazu, a genus of terrestrial dragons, it is expected to be in the end. Beautiful woman, real name Gong Yan, nickname Ao. A native monk in Fuyao, the Zhongmen suffered heavy casualties in that battle. The Zhushitang and Shantao were lost. Gong Yan did not have the heart and ability to be the ancestor of ZT. He was good at making money. Besides, she served as the lord of a sect. She has no such skills, so in these years she has only secretly helped the aspiring juniors of the sect several times. At most she will have trouble and then say hello to the Water King Zhu to see if she can move out of the Donghai mansion. Signboard to help tide over the difficulties. Gong Yan has been in contact with the female sword repairer named Nalan for many years. The other party claimed to be from the palace of the upside-down landscape Jing. It is said that she has now taken advantage of the situation as the new lord of the Yulong sect. The weak female cultivator of Yupu realm was transferred to be the master of law. The new sect master of Yulongzong, who is a sword repairer, once earned a lot of fairy money in partnership with Gong Yan in Shanshui grottos. So he missed his old feelings and recently invited Gong Yan to go there as the chief consecration or as a no-brainer. The chief guest secretary who is not in charge of money is also successful. Gong Yan also didn't directly reject the other party's kindness, but temporarily used a drag tactic. Wang Zhu said, "In addition to going to the Yu dynasty who changed the reign, I will also meet someone. You don't have to wait or look for it. The other party will find it by themselves." Gong Yan said with a charming smile, "As long as you don't be the famous young hidden official, you can talk to anyone when you see it. Except for Qin Pinyin, they are not shocked to see anyone. What about the ordinary Ascension realm? Isn't the Donghai monarch beside him also in the Ascension realm? Who dares to say something serious? Speaking of this, Gong Yan carefully glanced at Wang Zhu's face. Hearing the name of the hidden official, Wang Zhu didn't have the slightest expression on her face and she turned a deaf ear. Gong Yan turned her head and looked at a poor little guy. At the end of the team, a young man named Wang Qiongju was followed by her, who was responsible for carrying handheld parcels on his shoulders. The young man's forehead slightly bulged, and it was not a few years since he succeeded in refining his shape, mainly because he was still hungry and he had never eaten enough. I have been with Wang Zhu for so many years. After he has cultivated Xiaocheng, he barely had a personal appearance, so he was given the surname Wang, the name Qiongju, the word Yusha, and the Taoist name Hansu. It was the four-legged snake in Ni Ping Alley that was often thrown next door by Song Jisun, ran back to his home and was trampled on toes by Zhigui. At this moment, Wang Qiongju was carrying a greasy purple gourd obliquely behind his back. It was an ancient relic that was picked up by the owner from the sea. The ancient seal, catch and release. Perceiving Gong Yan's sight, the boy smiled shyly. Gong Yan became more and more curious about the palm-sized town, and if she had the opportunity in the future, she really wanted to visit it in person. According to the agreement with Wang Zhu, when Howren's water god's darts were completely over, they would be able to resolve their contracts with the water mansion. They would leave or stay and Wang Zhu would be free. Among them, Li Ba and Shiman planned to go to Aquarius Island to accompany the capital together and seek refuge with King Song Mu. One was a national teacher and the other was born in an earth dragon on the shore. They all wanted to try their luck, trying to help the dragon and become the minister of the dragon. As for the Jade Taoist Huang Man and Gong Yan, they are the ghosts and immortals with special status. Gong Yan is also a tired, lazy person. Apart from making money, she has nothing to do with her. Therefore, Huang Man intends to stay with Wang Zhu, relying on his stupid skill, accumulating merits a little bit, and then looking for an opportunity to see if he can find a stable place and start the mountain. As for whether it is a sect or not, Huang Man doesn't care about it. Gong Yan couldn't help asking, Wang Zhu, is that county town really so bottomless? On their side, it was Wang Zhu who asked not to have any honorifics, just call her name. Wang Zhu nodded and said calmly, the higher the monk's realm, the more you should not go wandering around. Gong Yan smiled and said, our group of people are considered to have seen the world. Wang Zhu sneered and said, the world? How big is the world? Have you seen how many Ascension realms and 14 realms and then stood in front of you? On the side of the road, a touch of white appeared out of thin air. I saw the man holding a thing and another golden rooster standing alone, raising his hand to look at the demon mirror, facing the beautiful woman and swaying for a while. Come again. The most exaggerated thing about the boy in white with the same head is that his posture and the content of his words are exactly the same today. Fengyuan Ferry, today Qin Pingon accompanied Song Yushao drinking and chatting. Miu came over and knocked on the door and smiled. Wang Zai is on the way here and there is also a scholar with the same jade medal next to him. Gentlemen. Song Yushao waved his hand, go ahead and I won't join in the fun. Qin Pingon stood up, followed Miu to the bow, and greeted the two academy guests who took the initiative to find the fairy on the windy kite. Qin Pingon took the lead and said, Brother Mingqi, I haven't seen him for many years. Wang Zai, the word Mingqi. Wang Zai, who just wanted to hold his fist, had no choice but to turn into an upright gesture of salute. I have seen official Chen. The two sides are indeed old acquaintances. When they met at the Great Wall of Jianqi, Wang Zai became the only scholar in the academy to have a license for the wine shop. The friend Wen Yu on the side is also the main action. Wen Yu in Tianmu Academy, I have met Mr. Chen. The head of Wuxia Academy, Zhou Mi, who had the same name as Wen Hai Zhou Mi and was often laughed at by the monks, had previously served as the head of the Luzhou Yufu Academy in Beiju, but if he had a bad temper he publicly threatened to see a wild monster clan hiding. The monks slaughtered one and even left the academy to participate in the search for mountains, and personally killed a few monsters so that he was confined to the Gongdalan Pass, otherwise he should have been promoted to a certain school. The palace's business is gone. In the 72 Academy of Confucianism, there are one principal and two deputy chiefs. Among them, the deputy chiefs have their own divisions of labor, one is diligent and the other is pragmatic. Wen Yu is the deputy chief who is in charge of all the general affairs. We must know that according to the decision-making of the Confucian Temple 20 years later, the ritual ministers of the various countries of the Xianxia dynasty must be from Confucian academies, which means that the deputy head of the mountain, Wen Yu, has almost become the supreme emperor of the countries under the mountain. Qin Pingon smiled and clasped his fists and said, I have heard of Wenxian's name for a long time, and I am lucky enough to meet him. Wang Zai said helplessly, Qin Pingon, we too are friends. Qin Pingon said, we relied on goodbye back then and cherished each way. As a result, Brother Mingqi returned to Haoran, and he failed to make plans to be a monk in the fairyland. Wang Zai choked for a while, but Qin Pingon grabbed his arm and said with a smile, it's okay to take the place of the academy to raise the teacher and ask the crime, but it's just that the new friends and the old friends talk about the old and the hard work, so they all drink first. When the group came to Miyu's house, Miyu was about to close the door and leave. Never thought that when Yu clasped his fists and smiled, I beg me Xianxian to stay and drink together. Miyu was confused, you are not a woman who has been to the Great Wall of Jianqi, what reason do you have to keep yourself? Qin Pingon smiled and said, then have a drink together. Miyu suddenly felt uncomfortable and wanted to expose her stuff. In case when you had the fairy on the mountain, wouldn't it be a matter of ruining the master hermit? It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. Miyu bit his scalp and said, we still need to practice retreat. Sword, I want to accompany you. When you said, on the other side of the battlefield, I have personally tortured several demon cultivators. Among them I mentioned Mi Jianxian, who gritted his teeth and hated him a lot. Miyu breathed a sigh of relief and said, earlier frightening me. Being missed by a Haoran woman and hated by a wild monster clan are the two great things in life. As a result, Mi's waist became hard and he waved his hand and said, you talk, I won't be short of drinking opportunities with Wen Shanchong in the future. Wen Yu smiled and nodded. Then it's settled, next time Fengyuan ferry passing by Tianmu Academy, I will prepare drinks early and wait for Mi Jianxian. Wang Zai turned his elbow out and smiled with Qin Pingon with his own heartfelt voice. Did you see it? It is true that this guy and me you had a relationship before meeting because they are both ruthless people. Qin Pingon smiled and replied, when you pulled you up this time to find the door together. First there was the Northern Xianxia incident, and then he suggested to dig a blasphemy without authorization. He planned to punish both crimes? It's just that the Tianmu Academy is afraid of me. Lift the table, Qingping Jianzong and Tianmu Academy fall out, Fan Shanchong will let you out of the mountain so that you can be a peacemaker? Wang Zai smiled and said, Wen Yu is too underestimated. In fact, before Wen Yu came to Tongyi's Hao, he had the idea of relieving refugees and gathering the hearts of Tongyi's Hao by excavating a blasphemy. This is not a hero. Slightly the same. Qin Pingon had a small accident. In that case there is no need to hide and tuck them, they are all their own. Qin Pingon simply asked the two deputy mountain leaders to lift the wine bowl from the table, draw out a scroll from their sleeves and spread the mountain and river scroll on the table. The scroll was extremely long, and the two ends almost touched the window and door of a room. Qin Pingon used a little trick, such as a pillared house, to prop up the scroll that was placed in the air, and then put the wine bowl on his hand. In the sky, like a white fish floating in the water, Qin Pingon didn't say anything nonsense, and directly began to explain the idea of this dotted route in detail, stretched out his finger, and slowly outlined a green dotted river in the picture scroll. In a certain country where needs to be changed, where needs to dig a riverbed, where need to move mountains and relocate, which cities may become underwater cities, subsidize the people, and roughly divide it into the hands of every citizen, how to calculate the money, how the local government offices and the household departments of the imperial courts of various countries filed with the Qingping Jianzong and Yuguizong, how the latter went to investigate the matter, and what if an official dared to fill his own pockets? Disposal. When Qin Pingon talked about the official's disposal plan, Wen Yu finally spoke. The punishment is lighter and he is directly demoted to a base. The descendants of the third generation are not allowed to participate in the imperial examination. In the hometown of these officials, the imperial court orders the local government to directly establish the steal is a warning to warn future generations that they dare to be greedy in this matter. Even if there is only 1 or 2 silver. This is the end, there is no discussion. Which royal household official dare to cover this matter and lose the official position? If you set up a monument to your hometown, I want to see how they return home. Which emperor couldn't bear to let the imperial court lose his country's pillars? So when you personally went to him to make sense. If anyone doesn't listen, it'll change. The persuaded King Ming became the throne. Qin Pingon raised his head and looked at the deputy head of Tianmu Academy. Wen Yu nodded and said, "Don't worry, although I am just the deputy head of the mountain, my meaning is equivalent to the meaning of Tianmu Academy. We will start this academy, Brother Minqi's Wuxia Academy, and Qing Long's Dafu Academy. I have no face not to do it." Wang Zai nodded afterwards. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Then do it." Wen Yu smiled and said, "Mr. Qin, maybe you don't have much contact with the academy, but the academy is not an officialdom, nor is it an immortal mansion. Master Qin Shan will have the opportunity to go more often in the future. For example, in our Tianmu Academy, I believe I'm not here today. Talking blatantly." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "It seems that I will have to move more with the academy in the future." Wen Yu asked bluntly, "Mr. Qin, after talking so much, have you ever wondered how Qingping Jinzong makes money?" Wang Zai stared at the scroll on the table. In addition to the earliest Dadu map, there were more than 100 maps of present-day contemplations of various countries. Qin Pingon temporarily released a map wherever he said before. Wang Zai shook his head. "How to make money? It's easy to talk about, it's hard not to lose money. Just talking about moving mountains and filling water all the way, how wasteful of manpower and material resources. If there are no 2 or 3 ascended realm great monks to help, they can only. It's a riverbed made by money. Most of the world's continents are naturally formed waterways, and new ones were excavated by manpower, which only appeared a few times thousands of years ago, which is extremely rare. The most recent time, Chidu in Aquarius, another country and continent of the Dali dynasty, accomplished this feat with the power of the whole country, and it was a move at all costs. But the great blasphemy of Tongyi's Hao belongs to the alliance of all forces, which means that all allies, including Qingping Jinzong, do not have any past success or failure experience to draw on. All forces need to touch stones, cross the river. In the future there will be tricky troubles, or anyone who feels that the interests are uneven, and the former allies will turn against each other. It is not impossible. So Qin Pingon mentioned the Taoist Nin and Xianxia along the way. Wang Zai's heart trembled, but there was nothing strange on his face. When Yu directly asked, "Xianxia? How did it leave the forbidden area?" Qin Pingon said, "It was tricked out." When Yu looked at the young hermit with a vigorous expression. Qin Pingon shook his head. When Yu nodded, "No hurry. It seems that 2 people who have never veiled their faces are tacitly aware without having to elaborate." Wang Zai stretched out his fingers and rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. These 2 get together, always feel that he, the deputy head of Wuxia Academy, should be trembling. Maybe one day he will go to Gongdalan to accompany Wen Yu to study together. Qin Pingon continued. First of all, Qingping Jinzong, Taiping Mountain and Pushun can each choose 3 to 5 vassals to go down the mountain as enclaves for long-term management. Of course, it is the kind of imperial courts of various countries that are temporarily unable to repair. Or the chicken rib site that opened up into a fairy mansion will not be a barren land of mountains and rivers, and it will not be a feng shui treasure that everyone rushes. Secondly, the construction of Xianxia ferry crossings, inns and shops along the way is also a long-term business with long-flowing water. 3. All the treasures of heaven, material and earth, gold, silver, copper and iron during the excavation of Dadu, as long as they are undiscovered in various countries in history, they can negotiate with the local dynasty and vassal on matters concerning the division of accounts. In addition, for example, the diversion of rivers. During this period, the ruins of various fairy houses were discovered, as well as the broken secrets where traces were unintentionally found. There are also some similar excavations of the old sites of the Dragon Palace on the ground. As long as you are lucky, it is not completely impossible. The latter will not be negotiated with other countries. Finally, together with Dadu, all Xianxia ferry ports along the way need to give priority to our ferry docking, without any toll or rent, like a Tongyin ferry on the Qingshan ferry of Xindu Mountain. It's in this row. But for the wind kite under our feet, all transcontinental ferries still need to pay a sum of ferry money with the holders of the ferry crossings according to the previous rules on the mountain. Together with Dadu, A complete commercial route was opened horizontally on Tongye Island, just like the Tongyin ferry at Qingshandu, which was suddenly useful. These are good things that are mutually beneficial and belong to long-term business. Presumably the countries in central China cannot ask for it. When you drew out the bottom scroll and placed it on the top, sipped a sip of wine, lay down on the table and asked, "But how do you divide the place for a great blasphemy, the extra mountain and water gods? I want to come near Pushan. The Peijiang River, the Donghai women and Qing Hongjun who have never been proclaimed, will definitely be able to join the ranks of the water gods promulgated in the academy. Then there is a blasphemy father, these 3 to 4 high water gods. You have the few leaders been divided up internally? Of course, on the surface they only have the power to recommend, but presumably the Temple of Confucius and the 3 academies will not make you too much trouble. As long as the candidates are right, maybe you will acquiesce." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I have indeed discussed this matter, but Qingping Jianzong has voluntarily given up this recommendation right. Maybe the Dequan dynasty and Yuguazong will both be elected, but Dadugong and Ho are both elected. Everyone agrees on the position of God, no one recommends or nominates, otherwise it would be too ugly to eat, so I just try to ensure that 2 people I like and get the position of great blasphemy." Wang Zai was relieved. When Yu raised his head and asked curiously, "Why did Mr. Qin give up?" "It's not a fake public offering for personal gain, and there is nothing to taboo about when appointing a sage does not avoid relatives." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "There is no suitable candidate. The goddess of buried river water, Bio Gongliru, the Yao family of Dequan will definitely spare no effort to recommend her as the of Dadashuibo. Moreover, Lu Ro really shouldn't jump several ranks in the Xianxia officialdom, and directly promoted to the prince. Moreover, Qin Pingon even suspects that the Water Empress would refuse to serve as Dadashuibo when you picked up the wine bowl and said sincerely, 'This is a worthwhile trip. I will leave after drinking this bowl of wine.' Can't guarantee more. Just talk about Yuguazong's side. If they make a moth in the future, Qingping Jianzong will only I need to send a letter from Feijian directly to Tianmu Academy. I will beat them. If the suzerain is Jiang Shangzhen, I will be polite to them. Forget it now, Wei Ying just went to the barren world and it's nothing for the time being. I don't need it. Sell their face." Having each served their bowls and drank, Wang Zai couldn't help but jokingly said, "What an arrogant and domineering master teaches himself." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Brother Mingqi is still a scholar." When Yu shook his head and said, "In terms of merit, courage and mind I am far behind Qin Shanzhu. These are not polite words on the wine table but the truth. Wang Zai knows this matter best. There is no way to say good things on the surface." After that, Qin Pingon accompanied the 2 deputy mountain captains to the bow of the ship. Wang Zai said, "Qin Pingon, we are currently planning to promote Xianxia Yizhuang." Qin Pingan's eyes lit up and he immediately rushed to say, "But use the fan Zizhuang that has lasted for more than 800 years as a model?" Wang Zai smiled and said, "Yes, but it needs to be more complete. There are more than 700 detailed rules. It is not an exaggeration to say that the bot must be compared. When Yu intends to do something good according to some people's heads." When Yu curiously asked, "Mr. Qin also knows about this?" Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment, took out a few thick booklets from his sleeve and smiled, "This is a real coincidence. I also have a general framework about this matter, but the detailed rules are not as good as you, only more than 500. The article Mr. Winshan takes it, don't need to return it and see if he can help check the omissions. When Yu took the booklet with both hands and after stopping at the bow of the boat he said, "Farewell to Mr. Qin." Qin Pingon had to make a courtesy, straightened up and said, "Chongwen, let me say a digression. Whether you are a schoolmaster or a master at academy, you can't separate it out, otherwise it doesn't matter if there is no way in the world. It's not a real piece." When Yu laughed and said, "As it should be, you and I coincide again." Wang Zai clasped his fists and smiled, "Qin Pingan, next time you drink, you have to be the one who is not drunk." Qin Pingon joked, "I know your drinking capacity, so I advise you not to say a few big words, so as not to repay your debts at the wine table next time. You will not be able to escape." The 2 young vice-chiefs of the academy left in this way. Below the ferry, the earth, mountains and rivers, green grass on the riverside, thinking about the long way. There are layers of peach and plum blossoms on the mountain, layer after layer. and the fireworks under the clouds are homes. The old mountains and rivers have a new atmosphere year after year and new year, to have fun together, to celebrate and to be new. You're tuning into the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.